Let's get ready to RPG!
RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG!
Hello and good evening. Welcome everyone to the Knights of Last Call. My name is Derek Melenda and I'm back, but only somewhat. We did not have a show Tuesday. I have been suffering from repeated panic attacks, what's called panic disorder. And today is World Mental Health Awareness Day. So, I will say that this has sucked. I'm trying to figure out, this is all new to me. But I will say that, the one, I guess, bright spot of all of this is I always had sympathy before for people who suffered from anxiety, depression, panic. So I had sympathy, but now I have empathy because I definitely have been going through it, and it's an everyday process, and we're trying to make it work. So, any case, we're here tonight though to do one of my favorite things, which is talk about RPGs. So today we're going to be taking a first look. And what first look means is I've never really played this game before. I've never seen this game before. It's my kind of gut reaction. So as I've prefaced many times before, don't call it a review. I'll give you my thoughts. But understand that they are based strictly on just an initial cursory examination. We usually do not get a chance to go into great detail about all of the systems and subsystems. So this is really just sort of a first look, and sort of my first impression. So in some cases, sometimes these episodes are intriguing enough to people that they go and they pick up the game. If you are interested in doing that, we have a link to a Drive-Thru RPG affiliate link in the description below. We get a couple % off of any purchase you make there. It doesn't cost you any more money, but we do make a couple percentage points. So thank you for that if you go ahead and do that. So that's kind of what a first look is. That's what we're trying to do here. We try to cram as much time as much game as we can in about 2 hours or so, and just try to see if the game's cool or what we're looking to do. And of course, I always judge games sort of on the basis of what Jared Sorensen used to talk about, which was this idea of what is this game about? Like, what does it say it's about? What does it seem to be about? Does the game give you, clear mechanics and systems that support that thing? And then does the game have reward systems in place that create a positive feedback loop so that when you do the thing that the game wants you to do, that the game says it's about, that's how you advance in the game. So, when a game does well in all three of those questions, usually I consider it to be a very tight game. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a game I want to play, but it's a tightly knit game. Let's see who we got. We got a couple people in here. We got Mark is in the house, and he is saying, hoping I'm feeling better. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Lance is here as well, saying today's ads were for insurance and gym. Gabriel, who recently joined the Patreon. Thank you, Gabriel. Is off to run Kingmaker, which is fantastic. It's always a good excuse to miss a stream. Moxie is here. Beowulf is here as well. Torin says that when a D&D dragon, you run towards it and you just ignore its fear aura. Twilight 2000 tank, hit the deck. Real fear. Evening Cephalopod. KC is interested to see what this is all about. Good to see you, KC. Beowulf says he had to take a 3 or 4 day break from KOLC for my own mental health. So I'm right there with you, Derek. Meds are great when you remember to take them. Yeah. So, again, I'm also very early into all of this, this process. Again, I've never had any sort of mental issues my whole life. No depression, no anxiety, no panic, no nothing. And so suddenly, after 41 years of basically being okay, about a month and a half ago or whatever, things just suddenly seem to really go quickly for me. So, I've obviously scheduled a bunch of doctor's appointments. I'm having my first sessions with a therapist soon. I'm going to see a psychiatrist. I'm on a an SSRI medication, very low dose, but it takes 4-6 weeks to kick in, maybe even more. And I'm only on week 2. So, I'm trying to take each day one step at a time, and kind of get through it. So yeah, so far so good. I mean, not really, but I have good days, I have bad days, and my plan is that hopefully more good days will come than bad. So Nick says, this game is really cool, and I hope the realistically dark subject matter isn't too much of a drag. It's just what we need.
Since at $50, excited to watch the VOD of this one. Had a great time running this game, also in line with this game. Take care of yourself, Carrot.
Sidon, thank you very much for that amazing tip. Thank you so much. Actually, that pays for my copay for my therapist appointment. So thank you so much for that, Sidon. That is awesome. Thank you so much. This had some popular support from our patrons, in part because we did have some patrons who were playing the game, and they were of course running it with our nice last call. We do a lot more than Pathfinder 2, as anybody will tell you. But yeah, so Sidon is one of those people who runs games for our community, and in this case, he ran the game. So yeah, I'm thank you for the support, Sidon, and thank you for running this game and building up some support for it. Thank you, Sidon. That is very nice of you. Moxie is here. Hello, Moxie. Glad to be catching it. Thaddeus is on time. Excited to hear your thoughts on this game since I loved it. Okay. Nothing will be as bad as Chubos. Chubos was neither bad nor good. It just is. And you'll know it when you see it. Commando is happy that T2K is here. Love running it. Mike says, ahoy, ahoy, Derek. Long time no see. Hey, Mike, what's up? What's up? Is the game wet, though? We'll have to take a check, Pepper, when we get into it. Calamacus is in here as well. Hello, Calamacus. Troy says, been many years since I played it, but my friend was in the military, was our GM. Unfortunately, he's not with us anymore, but it was very fun. Well, Troy. It does definitely have I think a game has kind of a pseudo military simulationist vibe to it. Thaddeus, I am definitely working on, I'm working on building up a network of support. I have great friends, who, and a great community who have, rallied around me, and, I'm trying to learn, educate, understand, empathize with myself, not get too down on myself, but also push myself to not just, give up and try to do stuff, trying to, set myself up in a mindset for success. Right. So, Mr. Squid, who I believe just joined the Patreon as well. Welcome, Mr. Squid. Have my eye on this game for a while, but I don't know if my players would like it. Well, we'll definitely talk about that. I don't know. It's a free league game, so my initial gut check is to go, okay, so it's Year Zero engine, but I know for one, the only thing I do know is that it's not exactly Year Zero engine. So, we'll see. But I mean, I will say that if the game has the kind of emphasis on like survival that Forbidden Lands did, that it can be very polarizing for many groups of players. Not to my knowledge, Mike. I don't think this is Mirth and Mayhem. No, is this a spinoff of Twilight Struggle? I mean, sort of, right? Because it's like Twilight Struggle ends if World War III happens, and then this would be Twilight 2000. Coming in super green, does the vibe of the video thumbnail reflect the game? I think so. Nick says it's the Year Zero engine with funky dice. All right, I'm down for it. I'm in for it. All right, let's hop over to the PDF. All right, so the core set, which I will admit is kind of pricey, but it comes with a lot of stuff. It's essentially almost like a box set, but you get the PDF. It comes with a bunch of stuff. I downloaded some of it, including the player's manual. There's also a referee's manual, and there's a variety of character sheets, maps, battle grids, and the whole like. So this is, this is the cover of the book. It's of the cover of the player's manual. So Alex says, this is an old game. No, yes and no. My understanding, and people in chat can feel free to correct me, it is, yes, it's a revamp. So it's an older game that has been out for a while, and Free League, in addition to creating their own entirely new games, Free League likes to sort of take older games and sort of give them a brush up, a spin up, and a republishing. And so this is definitely that in that vein, where this Twilight game is a game that's been out for 30 plus years. And in this case, this most recent edition was acquired by Free League and published and sort of given a fresh coat of paint and a repurposing. And like a lot of Free League repurposing, sort of takes inspiration from their Year Zero engine and incorporates it into the DNA of what this game in theory was. But what I like to start with, as I always do, is the character sheet. Because the character sheet, especially for people like us who have been playing a lot of RPGs our whole life. Oh, hold on a sec. Here we go. I always like to take a look at the character sheet because if you've been playing a lot of RPGs, like we all have, you can usually start to pick up some elements from the character sheet. And particularly since this is a Free League game, which is apparently Year Zero engine-ish, we can kind of judge some stuff from this. So let's start at the top here. We got a section for name and nationality. Okay, so again, there's this idea of geopolitics. And again, my understanding, just from the cover of the book, which says, role-playing in the World War III that never was, right? So the idea is that World War III happened, but presumably between various nationalistic superpowers. There may or may not have been nuclear exchanges, unknown. But my sense is that this is sort of a post-war world, and that a lot of nation states have collapsed, and the world is this kind of pretty brutal place, like a zombie apocalypse movie, but without the zombies. Would maybe be my understanding or take of it. And obviously, that's going to lead to some potentially very difficult things because that situation, which I just described, could easily describe most fantasy RPGs. In fact, maybe not some of the more modern ones where everything is super nice, but in most fantasy RPGs settings, like the world is always like recovering from some sort of ancient apocalypse, right? Because you want the world to be dangerous and full of stuff. But the problem is there you're fighting, orcs and goblins and quote unquote evil things. But in this game, as far as I can tell, there's no sci-fi to this. So that means that, the people you're going to be fighting, the people you're going to be struggling against, the people who you may be killing, are by and large going to be humans. So that's obviously a very tough thing to kind of get behind in some ways. All right. So we could see again the strong military elements here, right? The branch of military you're in, what's your military rank, a generic section for appearance. We have a section for moral code. Now, normally you might think this is pure FBT, fluffy bullshit time. But if this is like many other Year Zero engine games, it's possible that your moral code may be something that you can use to either get a bonus, like the Pride from Forbidden Lands, or to give you experience points, like a Dark Secret. Or maybe both. Or maybe neither. We'll see. Big Dream might also be sort of what your character's core goal is. Maybe if you accomplish that, you get some sort of bonus in the game. I always think it's a little strange when they put this on the front. How did you meet the group? Like, do I need that on my character sheet, like the very front and center? Is that something that's going to come up a lot? Anyways, over here we see experience current total. So this tells us this is a game where you earn experience points and spend them to probably level up your skills or get new feats or talents. Also, we do not see a level anywhere on here. So again, this definitely has elements of the Year Zero engine. And if you don't know about the Year Zero engine, we definitely did several videos on Forbidden Lands and other things. But in Year Zero engine, the core Year Zero engine game is you have skills and attributes and gear. And each one of those items gives you a D6. This is how core Year Zero engine works. So if you had, for example, 3 strength, you'd have 3 D6. And if your skill in melee was 2, then you would have 2 D6 skill dice. And then your gear would be maybe 2 because you have a really great, long sword. So now you have 2 dice from gear, 2 dice from your skill, 3 dice from your strength. And you would take all 7 of those dice and roll them. And what you're looking for is 6s. In fact, usually a single 6 means that you have succeeded. So that's kind of how the core, Year Zero engine game works. There's modifications and adjustments to that. All right. Roll for Comment says, wow, Twilight 2000, that is super old. Yes, but this is the Free League revamped version of Twilight 2000. Not exactly sure when it came out. I think this is 4th edition. Looks like it came out in 2021. So, 2021, November. So late. So almost 2022. So it's only a couple years old. Let's see here. So any case, again, that's how base Year Zero engine works. My understanding is that this game does not follow the same thing. And we can already see that here because we can see that you have 4 core attributes. That is very similar to, in fact, Forbidden Lands uses 4. And I only know this because I just recently finished up a campaign for the last year of Forbidden Lands. Forbidden Lands has strength, agility, wits, right, and empathy. They call it intelligence here, but intelligence, wits, it's the same thing. But what we can see here is you have a rating that gives you a base die. So it sounds like instead of rolling D6s, maybe having a higher strength means you roll a bigger dice. So like a D8 or a D10. So that's kind of interesting. But we can see strength, agility, intelligence, empathy. By the way, I think that these are 4 great ability scores. Just to kind of, generically kind of get away from the 6. 2 physical, 2 mental, kind of 2 that are very active, 2 that are kind of more reactive. And, it's a good balance anyways. And we can see that each of the attributes has 3 skills: heavy weapons, close combat, and stamina for our strength, driving, mobility, and ranged combat, recon, survival, and tech for intelligence, and command, persuasion, and medical aid. And especially in skill-based games like these, where you only have 12 skills in the game, skills very closely tell you what this game is about. Remember how I said, what is this game about? Well, this game is telling you what it's about, right? It's saying that, there's going to be fighting. There's going to be, there's going to be surviving brutal situations. There's going to be running and dodging. There's going to be shooting. There's going to be driving. We're going to be trying to survive. We're going to be trying to use whatever technology we can find. And we're also going to be ordering people around and asking people to help us. And lastly, we're going to get hurt. So that's pretty cool. And I'm interested to see what they do here and how they work this. Then we have specialties. Not quite sure what that is, but it's a section there. Maybe it's something that can give us a bonus. And then we get, and by the way, it's only a 1-page character sheet. And shout out, by the way, to Free League for providing us with this PDF for free. So that was pretty cool of them. So we've got combat, we've got damage, and stress. Okay, so we have 2 different sort of harm. En route, we would call these harm tracks, right? But we have 1 for damage, 1 for stress. Kind of sounds like Legend of the 5 Rings, right? Legend of the 5 Rings has fatigue and strife. So it's kind of the same thing, right? Hit capacity, stress capacity, coolness under fire. These are all new things, but you're getting a sense here of like this idea of, unit morale, coolness under fire. These are very like Apocalypse World sounding things to me and give me the sense of like the idea that morale and panic are going to be real things here. Great. More of what I need. Perfect. Critical injuries, diseases, again, kind of gritty and realistic. Armor is rated by head, arms, torso, and legs. We have 4 conditions that we can be marked for: starving, dehydrated, hypothermic, and sleep deprived. That is pretty much what they had in Forbidden Lands. In Forbidden Lands, you had, except, it just shows you, by the way, how much language can affect the tone of a game. Okay. Now, Forbidden Lands is called Forbidden Lands, right? But it's fantasy. And, it's raiders in a ruined, cursed world, right? That's the tagline of the game. But you have the exact same 4 conditions in Forbidden Lands. And in Forbidden Lands, they are hungry, thirsty, sleepy, and cold. And so just calling them starving, dehydrated, sleep deprived, and hypothermic, I think just already makes the game seem that much more, intense and much more harsh. Yikes. Okay, well, I guess this answers our question about were nukes used, because we have a radiation tracker here, both for temporary radiation exposure and permanent. Yikes. And then we have a gear. We have an interesting looking slot system here. We have combat gear over here. We have our backpack over here. Looks like there's 12 slots in each, but they're subdivided into 4 units. So that'll be interesting to look at. We have tiny items, which, if it's like Forbidden Lands, don't ever take up any amount of slots. And then we have 5 slots for weapon. We have Rel, which I'm guessing is its reload capability. I'm assuming ranged weapons are going to be pretty common here. Rate of fire, I'm assuming. Damage, critical, blast, maybe if it's an AoE. What's its effective range? Magazine size, armor penetrating, weight, how much ammo you've spent. REL is for reliability. Okay, so again, bringing in this idea that this is not a, it's sort of more of a durability, but it's the fact that it's like front and center on the board, on the board tells us that, weapons are going to be, getting chewed up. And that's it. That's our character sheet. That's the entire character sheet. Tight, nice, easy. I like it. All right, well, let's figure out how to play this game. Shout out to the game director and lead designer, Tomas Harenstam, who, of course, was a guest on this show not that long ago. Shout out to him. We also got to say hi to him at Gen Con. It was a lot of fun. And then specifically here, inspired by the original Twilight 2000 by Frank Chadwick. So, awesome. All right, we've got 149 pages in the player's book, and we've got them divided into 6 chapters. Chapter 1 is about the setting and what is a role-playing game. We've seen these before. Player character. So this is all the stuff that we just talked about. All the elements on that character sheet, attributes, strife, stress, and apparently that is hyperlinked, which is cool. Yes, these are all hyperlinked. Way to go. So we'll learn about player characters. And again, that goes up to page 20. Then we have something called the archetype method and the life path method. Interesting. Okay. I'm a big fan of life path systems. If you don't know what a life path system is, Traveler is sort of like the GOAT life path system. The idea of a life path system is that you sort of select various elements that sort of represent your character's upbringing. Like what happened, where were you born? How were you raised? What happened when you were a kid? What happened when you were a teenager? What happened when you were a young adult? And each of those different life experiences sort of, gives you certain skills and gives you certain ability scores, rather than like building a character just, from stats alone. Legend of the Five Rings does this with its 20 questions as well. I'm guessing the archetype method is the more traditional, like, I want to be a medic. I want to be a badass sniper, or I want to be a grizzled soldier, or a scarred veteran. I just want to be that, and I want to build that. So you get 2 methods. Develop your character. So this is how we probably level up, and we gain some stuff and some buddies. And okay, so it's only 2 pages here. Then we get into the 3rd chapter, which tells us all about the skills and how they work, and we'll learn about how the check of the game works, which is, again, it's only a skill-based game. And then there's a description of all of those 12 skills, and we learn what specialties are. Then a whole section on combat and damage. And again, we can see a lot of Year Zero engine terminology thrown around here, slow and fast actions, et cetera, but we'll take a look at this. Chemical warfare, radiation. And then our last 2 chapters, one is, of course, it's a modern game. I mean, all TTRPGs are somewhat guilty of this, but any sort of modern or sci-fi game, you got to have the gear porn. So we've got as many pages describing weapons as we did describing like how the game works, right? To teach you how to play the game, it's like 5 pages. To list all of the weapons, it's 20. Along with vehicles, U.S., Soviet, Swedish, Polish, and again, Free League is obviously based in Europe. So some of their games have a more European bend to them, or sort of more of a Scandinavian feel to them. More stuff about gear and a home base. So again, I'm getting strong Forbidden Lands vibes here for sure. And then lastly, travel. And there's a whole section here on travel. Keep in mind, there's an entire separate book for the GM, for the referee. Okay. So very cool. And we're going to get into this. I'm going to quickly catch up here on the chat. Let's see here. Commando says that reliability is just weapon HP. One of my players' MP5 broke constantly due to spamming full auto, as it would be wont to do. Leland says that you definitely don't want to fight as a first, second, or third resort. Bad. Yeah. And to be fair, this is one of those things that some people will really like and some people will really not like. I mean, I don't know exactly how their critical hit system works, but I can tell you, Forbidden Lands, your characters don't really gain hit points, and you might only have 3 or 4 hit points, and it's very easy for you to take 3 or 4 damage in a single attack. So your character can be dropped down literally by a single blow. Now, when that happens, you roll on a critical injury table. It could kill you, but oftentimes it will just injure you or hurt you. But that makes it more likely that you're going to become injured again. So it is kind of what we call a death spiral. It's not for everybody. Some people want to have all these cool weapons because they want to fight. So just be aware of what your group is like. Let's see here. Nick says stream elements tips might be down. Oh, I don't know. Let's see. But I don't know if that link works or not. If it does, then it's up. All right. So we're not going to get too deep into this because we kind of, went through this, but we've got some little short essay about what happened. We are the proud U.S. 5th Mechanized Infantry, now just a band of scattered survivals, spread out all over hell, running for our lives, dying in the Polish dirt, which have been cratered and irradiated by tactical nukes. There you go. And again, very clear out the date. Twilight 2000 is a role-playing game about survival in mankind's most desperate hour. It is in the year 2000 of a history that took a very different turn from our own. The world is ravaged by war. Yet in this very bleak world, there is still hope. Mere survival is not enough. In the midst of utter destruction, you can start to build something new, rally more people to your ranks, stake a claim and protect it, and maybe if you live long enough, start turning the tide. This really is kind of the elevator pitch, honestly, for Apocalypse World. Apocalypse World really has a lot of the same themes and a lot of the same tone. Obviously, it's got a little bit more of a weird sci-fi bend to it, but it is very similar in the this idea of survival, but also this idea of trying to build something in this this apocalypse world. The players, each player in this game except one, the GM must presumably, takes the role of a player character. It might be a soldier from the now scattered U.S. forces in Europe, but it could also be a soldier of another nationality or even a civilian. In the fallen world of Twilight 2000, it doesn't matter where you came from. It's your actions that go forward. Okay, so generically, it assumes by default that we are some sort of soldier. But, there are plenty of options. Here's how role-playing games work, including having a GM. And we have what the GM is called a referee. All right. So, you got, again, I got to really respect it when games just come out very early before you've ever made a character. And it's very clear cut. What do you do in this game? Okay. There's no one to hold your hand and show you where to go in a world engulfed by war. It's up to you and the other players to decide where to go together. The referee will place encounters, NPCs, and tough challenges in your path, but in the end, the stories of this game are created by you. They are not written down beforehand. You have control over your PC's lives, and there is plenty to do. Very, very different language than we sometimes are expected to hear from. So the game is very overt. Our immediate goal is to stay alive. You need to scrounge for food and ammunition and fuel from day one. You're in hostile territory and surrounded by enemies and marauders who will try to kill you on sight and take what's yours. All right. So right off the bat, boom, we are in a survival situation. And I get it. That's not for everybody. We also have the opportunity to help those in need. You'll meet people who are even in more dire straits than you, starving refugees, civilians terrorized by some local warlord. It's up to you and your conscience whether to help those in worse need than yourselves or leave them to your fate. You're not necessarily the good guys, but you have an opportunity to be. And there's no like alignment system forcing you to be. You're going to search for information about where enemy troops are, where bridges are blown, what towns were nuked. Finding safe havens in the sea of chaos, small communities or bases. Staking a claim, aka making your own stronghold. Maybe one day you can stop running. When you've gathered enough resources and found a location safe enough, you can create your own sanctuary in a world of war, a home base. The start of something new in the ruins of the old. Yeah, so this is, again, very, very similar to Forbidden Lands. Find a way home. If you're from a foreign land, maybe you're trying to figure out a way to get back home. And again, I like RPGs that have like kind of have like an exit strategy for your PC. The idea that all the PCs just stay together forever, you know, it's very convenient and homogeneous, but like it doesn't really represent the truth of the matter. Some people join just for a limited time. Reset the world. Uh-oh. Let's see here. Well, what if there could be a way back to heal the world, to reawaken civilization as we knew it? Mad prophets preach of a new dawn. Rumors by campfires whisper of mysterious plans for rebooting the world. Whoa, we got a little bit of a sci-fi element here. Am I getting like time travel vibes? I don't know. Hey.
Alternate GM tipped $10, jumping in to share some love. Watched the Fate Forge VOD from last December, last night. Hyped for my books to arrive soon. And now back to Twilight, 2000, we'll catch the full VOD.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you, AltGM. Appreciate it. Yeah, Fate Forge definitely has a lot of very strong support in our Patreon. Ben was a huge believer. Smith picked up a huge catalog of it when he was starting his 5th edition game because it is a 5th edition clone, but it has some interesting elements to it, and it's laid out very nicely. So they did a good job with that. Beowulf says, so what you're saying is that TLTK needs sex moves. Sebastian says, every game needs a sex move. Not every game. Some people are very much against it. But yes, I doubt this game has sex moves. Anyways, so we can see here, we have 2 default campaign settings, Poland and Sweden. All right. Maybe not what you're expecting. I mean, look, I'm not going to lie to you. Okay. Like, for example, this game comes with a map. Okay. It's a hex map, right? And I recognize Lodz and I recognize Warsaw. Okay. But I'm not particularly very familiar with most of Poland. I will be 100% honest with you. I would have an easier time running this game. I would have a probably more fun time running this game, right? If I set this thing up like Red Dawn, right? If I set this thing, or like, Man in High Castle, but, set it in the 2000s, right? Instead of, the 1950s or whatever, or 60s. But just because, I'm more familiar with North America, obviously. So it, makes it's easier for me, and it's, there's more resonance for me and my players. These names and words don't mean as much to me. The terrain isn't as familiar to me. So, but fundamentally, you could see, much like the Forbidden Lands, and I think this is the Swedish map here. Because again, those are the 2 things here. Archer says Wolverines. Yes. To be absolutely very clear, I love Red Dawn. Okay. I was a huge Patrick Swayze fan growing up. My mom used to watch Dirty Dancing all the time. I love the movie. I still love the movie. I'll be honest with you. I'm a Patrick Swayze fan, but Red Dawn was so awesome. It was so realistic. I loved it. And it's realistic in the sense that, well, spoiler alert, a lot of the people die. Anyways, they made a remake of the movie, which I have not seen, but I probably never will. Because they always are bad, but I love Red Dawn. In fact, my love for Red Dawn is probably one of my great sadnesses amongst my gaming collection. You see, in the 1980s, Milton Bradley produced a series of war games that was called their Game Master series. Now, the most famous of these is, of course, Axis and Allies, which many people know. Milton Bradley eventually sold Axis and Allies to Avalon Hill, which published a variety of revisions. I love Axis and Allies. I've played Axis and Allies hundreds and hundreds of times. I mean, I'm not even joking. Hundreds and hundreds of times. Love the game. But there were 3 other games in the Game Master series. One was called Shogun, which was very quickly renamed to Samurai Swords because of naming disputes with the novel, the Jim Caviezel, whatever novel. James Caldwell, whatever. The guy from the recent TV show, right? That they made a movie out of and then a mini series out of. It got renamed to Samurai Swords. I love that game too. It's also one of my favorite games. Love that game. Yes. And then it was originally released as Shogun, very quickly released as Samurai Swords. And then it got eventually purchased by some other company. And now it is released as Ikusa. So it's a great game. It's one of my favorites. And particularly we loved it growing up. We had all sorts of fun. We have a lot of fun memories playing Samurai Swords. Anyways, there were 2 more games that are very lesser known. One is called Broadsides and Boarding Parties, which for a long time was, because the other 2 games were like, even when I was younger, they were very expensive. I have no idea how much they could possibly cost now. Broadsides and Boarding Parties was a kind of pirate themed, ship combat game. But the 4th game was called Fortress America. And Fortress America was basically Red Dawn, the game. One player was America, and you were attacked by the Cuban communists and the Mexican communists and the Soviet communists, and you had to fight off all the commies. It was, pure 80s. It was literally Red Dawn, the board game. And I do not own it. I've only played it maybe once or twice at various board game things, board game cons and board game meetups. And I just, again, I was a huge fan of Red Dawn growing up. So that is a quick side note. Sorry for that tangent. But Ken said that he played a Red Dawn style game with the system. It worked really well. And of course, go Wolverines. Awesome. Yeah, GM Scott says Fortress America rocked. Yes, very much. I absolutely believe that they do let you place it anywhere. I'm just saying that I don't know how much additional detail they put into the game. So I believe the premise of the new Red Dawn is that it's North Korea. Yeah. Because they're the commie bad guys now, right? Ken says Poland has been the default starting location for Twilight 2000, but Sweden as a starting location was added in this edition since FL is, of course, from Sweden. And to be fair, there's a certain amount of sense to that, right? Poland has always sort of been a battleground between the East and the West. And so if going back to long time. And so if we assume that there was some sort of, Warsaw Pact, NATO confrontation that happened in this alternate history, it makes some amount of sense that Poland would have been, in some ways, the sort of front line, right? Anyways, we're getting all off the place here. So we got Poland. Yeah, look at that. For yet another time in this century, Poland became the central battleground for the beginning of a world war. Unlike World War II, however, the Twilight War has no end. In the fields, forests, and cities of Poland, the age's great ideologies waged battles that devastated everything in their past as the world crumbled under nuclear attacks. Yikes. Now Poland is once again a room of feudal warlords, lawlessness, deserters, and brigandry. Here, where war seems fecund and bent to seed, civilization died and was buried. Petty tyrants and devastated military units crawl across a landscape pockmarked by modern war, each simply trying to survive in the shadow of a world they can now only remember. That's pretty melodramatic there, but yeah. All right. But Free League is Swedish, and so they have they said, they're like me, like I was like, hey, if I made this game, I'd set it in America. And they're like, hey, we're making this game. We're going to set it in Sweden. And here we go. The Referee's Manual, which is the book we're not looking at, also briefly outlines other scenarios. All right. So this is how we roll dice. Okay. We're not going to really think this. We start as the U.S. military advance towards Warsaw. Operation Reset has been crushed by Soviet forces. Your group of U.S. soldiers, local soldiers, or civilians is running for their lives, forced to defend themselves in hostile territory. So this is the start. The start of the game baseline is that you are the former remains of a U.S.-based unit with maybe some other locals or civilians mixed in after the military advance has been crushed. All right, we've got our character sheets. We've got dice. We need standard polyhedrals. We need sixers, D8s, and D10s, and D12s. We'll also need a bunch of extra D6 to use as ammo dice. Okay. Cards. And I'm sure these cards are just like the cards from Forbidden Lands. Yes, they can draw for initiative in combat. So it uses the Year Zero engine, right, where everybody draws from a deck of cards, and that's the order of initiative. And there is also apparently an encounter deck that you can draw during travel. 10 initiative cards, 1 through 10, and 52 encounter cards. Okay, cool. I was going to say, you can manage without these custom cards. Yeah, I'm sure that's fine. You don't need that technically, any of that. We've got a hex map, so it's kind of a hex crawl game. What is a role-playing game? I think we could safely skip that. Brutalistic art. Maybe this is your starting party. A band of soldiers and would-be civilians and an APC that's barely running. And that's kind of the start of your game. It's a cool premise. I like it. It's interesting. All right. The art here is just great. Free League continues to just knock it out. I mean, obviously Dragonbane has a completely different style, but I love their art there. But this kind of, it's almost kind of impressionistic. It's kind of a very soft watercolor look to it, even though it's something that's really harsh. It's a cool component. It's a very, again, this to me, this is the iconic, right? This is the hero shot. This is the party shot. This is like what your world is going to be like. Anyways, so let's get into making a character. The chapter, okay. The chapter first explains some core character concepts, and then we offer 2 different ways to make characters. We talked about the archetype method, which is that lets you create whatever character you want in minutes, jump into the action, gives you a fairly balanced group. Super simple. All right. Life paths. This is where you're going to develop your backstory, and you're going to learn skills sort of diegetically and along the sort of path. This will create more fleshed out characters, but they will also have varied levels of competency, right? So the characters might not be as balanced and perfectly tuned as they would be if you did them with archetype. Forbidden Lands did this as well. I thought it was really cool. Nationality. Most people will be Americans or locals. We assume all the characters know their native language, and all PCs are assumed to know a little bit of English. And all characters from former Warsaw Pact countries know a little bit of Russian. Branch tells you where you got your training. It could be military or civilian. If you use the life path system for character creation, you gain skill points and specializations from your branch. If you use the archetype method, this is just flavor. Okay, so it either means something or it doesn't, but again, it's more of a guide. Military rank has no meaning, but orders from a superior officer hold more weight. Show under social conflict. Okay. Attributes. Okay, so they're rated from A to D. A is top human capacity. B is above average. C is your average Jane. D is weakened or diminished. Okay, so C is average. Don't tell the Pathfinder people that. C is average. D is weakened. B is above average. A is top of the line. So we've got strength, agility, intelligence, empathy. Your attributes are used when you roll dice to perform actions in the game, as well as for determining how much damage and stress you can take before becoming incapacitated. When rolling dice, each attribute rating is connected to a specific die. Okay. So here we go. So if we have an A, we get to roll a D12. This is perhaps the most not needed column in history, but yes, the die size of a D12 is 12. And the die size of a D6 is 6. Again, sometimes it sounds like we're going to be using the dice itself. We're going to be rolling a D12. Other times, if we have a D10 in something, for example, that might give us 10 points, maybe of damage capacity. All right. Your attributes determine how much damage and stress you can take before getting taken out of the action. This is measured by your hit capacity and your stress capacity. So this is just like Forbidden Lands. Forbidden Lands, 2 of the attributes, strength and wits, represented your physical endurance and your mental endurance. In Forbidden Lands, your wits would be attacked by fear attacks and everything like that. I don't like that strength covers endurance. Those two are not synonymous by any means. You know, I agree with you, but I also think that generically speaking, it works pretty well, honestly. It's very difficult to imagine, you know, I mean, like, especially if your character is a competent person, like a strong character who also isn't tough, right? Because endurance, sure, elements of it is like, I'm going to run a marathon. But for most of the time, when we think of endurance, especially in these kind of games, we're imagining someone who has the ability to, you know, get punched, get hit, get knocked down, get cut, get bled, right? Not some ultra marathoner. So anyways, your hit capacity equals the sum for your strength and agility divided by 4 rounding fractions up. Okay. So if we have a 10 strength and an 8 agility, or a D8 and a D10, we'd have 18 divided by 4 is 4 and change. So we'd round up. So it'd be 5. So that would be our hit capacity, 5. Our stress does the same thing for int and empathy. Okay. So strength B and agility C give you a hit capacity of 5, rounded up 4.5, while B and D give you 4. Okay. So these are basically our hit points. And by the way, I don't know if it's even possible, but if for some reason we had a 12 and a 12, which probably is not possible, but if we had a 12 and a 12 in 2 physical stats or 2 mental stats, we would have 24 divided by 4 is 6. So that means that the absolute maximum that you can have in terms of hit points is 6, which is the same in Forbidden Lands, by the way. And if somehow reason we had a 6 and a 6, we'd have 12 divided by 4 is 3. So that means we're going to have between 3 to 6 hit and stress capacity. So not a lot. Not a lot of hit points to play with. And remember, this isn't a level-based game. All right. Skills represent broad fields of expertise that you have acquired. They are also measured from A to D, where D is only rudimentary training and A is the best of the best of the best. You can also have a skill level of F, meaning you have no training at all. This is the default and does not need to be indicated in your character sheet. Oh, okay. All right. You can generally roll for a skill even if you have no level in that skill at all. But in this case, we just use the attribute in question. So you can roll just with you don't get a skill die. All right. And there we can see elite, veteran, experienced, novice, untrained. And using a very intuitive A, B, C, D, F grading scale. So pretty easy there. And remember, going back to our character sheet here. So that's going to basically give us here, right? People in chat can tell me it seems kind of pointless to put the rating in. Does the rating even matter? Like, couldn't this just say strength D10? Like, couldn't heavy weapons just be D8? Like, do I need to put B there and then put a D8? Doesn't really seem like that really accomplishes anything. So seems kind of pointless. So I'm a little bit like head scratching on that, but you know, we'll get to it. So that's the gist of that. Specialties are narrow, finely tuned abilities that give you an edge and a way to fine tune your characters. They are explained in chapter 3. All right. So we're not going to learn what strength or what specialties do just yet. Kind of weird to put them there and then basically say, here's what they do, but I'm not going to tell you what they do. Coolness under fire. So this was one of those new ones that we did not understand, right? Because now we can see, by the way, that our damage boxes cap out at 6. So we don't necessarily have all of these, right? Potentially, right? Because our hit capacity and stress capacity could be lower than that. But we have this coolness under fire thing on our character sheet here on the left side. When bullets start to fly in your direction, you need to keep a cool head. Panicking can cost you your life or get someone killed. Coolness under fire, or cuff for short, or cuff. How would you pronounce it? Is rated between A through D, just like an attribute. The better you cuff, the better your cuff, the better you are at keeping calm in combat. After each session in which you rolled a cuff roll, you have a chance to improve your cuff. I think the ratings help new players to RPGs understand how good the die is. Yeah, I guess. But like, I guess it could, I don't know. It could still just be in the book, right? Like, also, I think fundamentally we understand, right? D12 is better than D10. bigger, better, right? Numbers go burr. What's up, JP? What's up? For those of you who aren't familiar with JP, he is a YouTube content creator and illustrator, and he is currently in the midst of a Kickstarter. So if you want to check that out, it's much more kid friendly. But it's more whimsical. I won't even say kid friendly. I mean, it is kid friendly, but we'll go with whimsical. But I'm a big fan of his art style, and he has a great YouTube channel. So also check it out. And then Steven can't help but stir the pot and says he also ignores my chats asking him to come on my show. Womp, womp, womp.
Dungeons and Dragons. Satan's game.
All right. So it sounds like kind of like old school morale rating, but we'll get to this. Unit morale. All right. So this is interesting. In war, your unit is your family, your home. You live and die with your friends. In this game, this is represented by unit morale, represented from A to F, just like a skill. It is primarily used for cuff rolls. The better the morale in your unit, the better your chances of keeping a cool head. Read more about this in page 67. No matter which method used for character generation, your group's starting unit morale is equal to the highest command skill in the group. You only have one unit morale score for the group, so it's enough that one of you keeps track of it on your character sheet, usually the character with the highest command score. And this will change throughout the course of the game. So, okay, so cool. So basically, if you probably want one person, right, who is kind of the commander, right, who's kind of the leader of the group to give you group that cohesiveness, that morale, right? Very cool. All right, here we go. Moral code. So this is that element that I said up at the top here, moral code of your character sheet, that I said might have more to it than just fluffy bullshit. During play, you will face situations that test your moral code, where following puts you or your group in immediate danger or requires a sacrifice. The referee has final say on when this happens. But if you choose to follow your moral code, you get a +1 modifier to one related skill roll, if it makes sense in this situation. And you will learn from this experience, earning an experience point at the end of the session. Cool. So we get a mechanical bonus, a +1 to the skill roll, and we also get a bonus experience point. Sounds good to me. If we choose to betray our moral code, we will suffer an immediate point of stress. At the end of the session, you also have the option to scrap your moral code and write a new one. Okay, so if we choose to go against it, there's a penalty. And we may even have the ability to remake it. Maybe our moral code has changed. All right, very cool. You can't just make decisions for lulz, right? Your moral code matters. But it's not static, right? It can change. It can grow. It can develop. Big dream. Your immediate goal in this game is to live another day, but in the long run, surviving is not just enough. During play, you will gain extra XP if you take concrete action to realize your big dream. Again, the game is giving you mechanical incentives to go out and do these things that the game wants you to do. The game wants you to struggle with your morals in this, right, harsh world, because obviously it's easier to not have any morals, right? It's easier to just do whatever needs to get done to survive another day, right? That's the easiest way. That's the most realistic way. But this game posits that maybe it's more interesting if the game incentivizes you to follow your moral code and rewards you for doing that. And so there's a strong incentive to follow your moral code, not just from a mechanical perspective, but from a rewards perspective. Of course, there's people who say this cheapens the experience of following your moral code, but I don't agree with that. Same thing with following your goals, right? Taking proactive steps to accomplish your goals. All right, your buddy. You must choose which one of the other PCs that you feel closest to. This is your buddy. Mark your choice on the character sheet. If you risk your life for your buddy or make a major sacrifice for them, you get a +1 modifier to one related skill roll if this makes sense in the situation, and you gain XP bonus. If you witness your buddy getting injured, you risk suffering mental stress. Very cool. Awesome way to just join everybody else in the party together. And by the way, just because you pick somebody as your buddy doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to pick you as their buddy. So I think that's cool. And that's going to one of those things, Powered by the Apocalypse does this really well as well. That's, I've seen a lot of character creation sessions for traditional D20 games where people really just do not talk to each other, right? Other than maybe that initial phase of like, who's being the cleric? Wait, you're going to be a sorcerer? Okay. Well, is anybody being a fighter or barbarian? Do we have a frontliner? And then everybody just heads down and they're just scribbling on their piece of paper. Things like this really encourage you to interact and talk to one another and figure out why they're your buddy. And you start world building just from making characters. And I love this, this backstory has no mechanical effect. They're just very clear with this. They're like, don't get excited here, but yes, how you met. What's our basic appearance, name, and gear. We'll start with a basic gear based off of what our life was before everything went to shit. In addition to the items you choose, you're assumed to have a uniform or sturdy civilian clothing. All right. So, pretty good. Oh, in addition to your personal gear, you get to choose some gear for the group as a whole. Together, pick a number of the items listed below equal to the number of PCs in the group. You can only choose an item of the same type once. If you want to trade something in the list for something of similar value, the referee could allow it. So again, more group decision making, right? Like this idea of like, hey, do we want to start with a backpack or not? Because otherwise we might not. Do we want to start with some, extra shotguns or binoculars or a dirt bike, But this is a group decision, which is pretty cool. All right, Thaddeus is off to play Delta Green. Awesome. Enjoy, Thaddeus. Roll for Combat says Derek is my buddy. Yes, that's you and me, buddy, at the cons for sure. When you hurt, I hurt. Vehicle. In addition to group gear, the team can start with a vehicle. I think that's really cool. I think that's actually really cool. Roll 2d6 on the table below and add the number of PCs in the group. So let's say we have 5 PCs. Choose an appropriate vehicle in Chapter 5 from the indicated category. A fully civilian group should never be allowed to start with a military vehicle. However, your vehicle is assumed to have been converted to run on alcohol, and you start the game with half a tank of it. Interesting. Instead of rolling, you can discuss with the referee and decide together if you should start the game with a vehicle, and if so, which one. I want to see this. Okay, here we go. Okay, here we go. So if we have 5 PCs, the lowest we could get is 7. So we start with a 2-wheel drive car. All right, so not the greatest thing in the world. But let's assume that we roll, let's say we roll like a 6. So we get an 11. All right, so we start with a Jeep or a HMMWV. HMMWV. Is that like a Hummer? A Humvee? Is that what that is? A Humvee? I'm not really a military guy. Commando says it is a Humvee. Okay, I'm down. I'm down for it. Value of ammo, a little sidebar here. By the way, just cool little graphical touch. I like the sidebar. It looks like it's a paper clipped in note. In the world of Twilight 2000, the world economy has collapsed and paper money has little value. Instead, most businesses conducted through bartering. Ammunition has become the basic currency. That's kind of cool. That's kind of cool, right? Number one, it makes sense. But number two, it means that when you find gold, you're finding ammo. And when you're shooting your ammo, you're shooting away your gold, right? Where you so used to thinking of ammunition as being like the cheap part, right? Like buying the bow is expensive, but the arrows are basically free. So this is like, number one, I think it's very realistic. And number two, very, very cool. It's a strong way to sort of set the tone for the reality of this world. All right. Continuing with the character sheet, we have encumbrance. It is measured in encumbrance units or just units. Roughly 3 kilogram, anything that can be carried in one hand. An assault rifle. Smaller items weigh half a unit or quarter of unit. And so now we begin to understand why the slots are divided into fourths. All right. By the way, it's been tough for me these last couple of weeks, but I'm able to get through the day in these streams because of the loving support Squirrel Lash, and Kitopaz. Thank you. Thank you, boys. I need you. All right. They were just randomly on the. I've been cleaning up in here, and they're just randomly on there. Roll for Combat says, "Woot!" I mean, let me be very clear. Not only is Squirrel Lash cool, I like Squirrel Lash, but I think that the fire element in Eldamon, whether you have it as an elemental avatar or the Eldamon trainer, through the fire type, is really sweet. I love the way that Mark did the fire stuff for Eldamon. I'll be honest with you, I don't know what Kitopaz does, but I do know what Squirrel Lash does. That was one of the ones that we looked at. All right, measuring time. Okay. Okay, I hate this. I hate this in Dragonbane. I hate this here. They refer to these things as round stretches and shifts. And I'll be honest with you, people who've been playing Dragonbane for like almost a year now, and people still get stretch and shift messed up. It's just crazy. Like, just, you know, it's just not a good name. It's just not a good name. Anyways, all right, so gear goes onto our sheet. Combat gear is whatever's in our combat webbing, holstering slings. It is easily accessible and can be taken out as a fast action. You can only carry a number of encumbrance units equal to your strength die as combat gear. So, for example, if our strength is rated at C, that means we're rolling a D8. That means we can have 8 units of combat gear. And that's the stuff that basically is like quick to get to, right? Fast action. Think of it as like a bonus action. If you have a backpack, you can use it to carry an additional number of encumbrance units. Okay, so a backpack gives you a whole second inventory track. I like that. That's cool. But it gives you a -2 modifier on mobility rolls. I like that. Wow, that's very cool. You know, a lot of times it's kind of ridiculous what people are carrying around their backpacks. Getting an item from your backpack, however, is a slow action, and it requires a mobility roll. Dropping your backpack to the ground is a fast action. It does not affect your encumbrance. All right, very cool. It's a cool way of doing it. And tiny is negligible. Ammo. Ammunition inside the weapon is included in the weapon weight. 1 extra magazine weighs 1/4 of a unit. An ammo belt for a machine gun typically weighs an entire unit. Ammo belts are never included in the weight. Artillery shells. All right. Food. So nothing like Forbidden Lands resource dice here. 1 daily ration of food weighs from 1/4 to 1 full encumbrance unit, depending on the type of food. Okay. A daily water ration weighs 1/2 a unit. That feels pretty accurate. Actually. Maybe it should be a little bit more, but water is heavy, folks, right? A pint's a pound the world around. So it adds up quick. If you're lucky enough to have more gear than you can carry, you can create a stockpile. This person's come the quartermaster. If you have a vehicle, this is the obvious place to keep your stockpile. The vehicle tables indicate how many encumbrance units a vehicle can carry in addition to its passengers. AKA, some people just love to play, right, spreadsheets and calculators. And you know what? Logistics can be fun. All right. Radiation. To finish off character creation, no matter what you use, roll a d6 to determine your starting amount of radiation. Yikes. So nobody's getting out unscathed. Everybody's gotten some radiation damage. That's rough. All right. So, we're not going to go through the archetype character creation and stuff like that, but you know what we'll do is we'll take a look at this example character sheet, so we can see that there is this is too good. I'm gonna have to show. There's a buddy. So one of my buddies that I go to Vegas with, Ron. He's also who I play racquetball with frequently. His nickname up at the shop is Ronson. All right, so we've got Ronson. He's from the U.S. He's U.S. Army PFC. His buddy is Diaz. His moral code is: the team relies on me and my rate of fire. I'd give my life for my friends. Big dream: find a place to settle down away from the war. All right. So he's starting off with an A in strength, D12, an A in agility, D12, a C in intelligence, and a D in empathy. All right. Real grunt. He's got good proficiency with heavy weapons, close stamina, and range combat. He's so-so at driving, mobility, and stamina, and no skills in the intelligence and empathy. So this guy is a grunt through and through. So we can figure out before, right? He's got a D12 here and a D12 here. That's 20. That's 12 and 12. That's 24 divided by 4, 6. So his hit capacity is 6. However, his stress capacity is only 4. His coolness under fire is rated C. We haven't really quite fully understood what that does yet. He has Kevlar helmet and a flak jacket. He's starting with 6 points of permanent radiation. Yikes. My guess is that when this fills up, you're dead, is my guess. He has a machine gun, which takes up 2 full slots. It's a big thing. And then he has 3 ammo belts for it. You know, I'm just imagining the big, you know, bandoliers of bullets, you know, Rambo style draped around him. He's got a flak jacket, which we noted in his armor. He's got a bunch of smaller items. He's got 4 hand grenades, a knife, a personal med kit, and his Kevlar helmet, which takes up 2 slots. He is carrying a backpack, which is carrying food and water. It's cool. And here's the information on his machine gun. So we can see the reliability, the rate of fire, the damage, the crit, the range, the magazine, the weight. And that's it. That could be your whole character. So, I mean, it's pretty basic, right? I mean, there's not a whole lot to your character. As far as I can tell, you know, even Forbidden Lands had talents, right? Which were kind of like, you know, feats or powers or whatever you want to call them. You know, this game has specialties, machine gunner, but other than that, we don't really see too much else. So this is the only thing that we really don't know what this means yet. So we'll have to get into that. All right. Pretty cool. Simple, easy. I could definitely see the Year Zero engine element here. And I think, I don't know, this seems to work for me. So if you do want to create an archetype, here are the different, just like kind of like pre-built sort of in a way. You could be the grunt, you could be the civilian, the gunner, the kid, the mechanic, the medic, right? All the classic tropes from this kind of drama. The officer, the operator, the spook. Oh, I love it. It's like you're like a lone gunman who like believed that, you know, the war was coming and was prepared for it, like a prepper in a weird way. Alternatively, you can do the life path generation system where you're basically going to be rolling on tables. This is very similar to Forbidden Lands to see like, what was your childhood like? Did you grow up as were you a military kid? Were you, a military brat? Did you grow up in the streets? Did you grow up in a small town? And that's going to give you different skills, and that's going to give you different specialties, right? Like if you grow up in a small town, you know how to drive and you know how to shoot and you know how to survive. But if you grew up, in a very, educated and, intellectual family, then you're going to know more about technology and speaking and all this other stuff. So very cool. It really is a great way to sort of tie the mechanics of your character into the story of your character and start building a story about your character. Lots of information if you did serve in the military, where that came from. So this is a whole life path system. Very cool. Very cool. All right. So we've got 2 pages here, a 2-page spread on developing your character. So this is a question of, okay, so we made a character. We know what the game's about. Did we do the things the game about? It rewards us. Great. Let's see if it does. All right. The things you learned in the game are measured in experience points. You receive XP at the end of every game session. Talk it through and let the whole group discuss what has happened. For each of the questions, you can reply yes, you get 1 XP. All right, this is straight out of Forbidden Lands Year Zero engine. Did you show up to the game session? You get an XP for being there, right? So everybody gets 1. Did you follow your moral code despite significant risk to yourself or your group? Remember, we learned that the moral code, if you follow it, and it's not easy, not only do you get a bonus to your die roll, you get a bonus experience point. Did you risk or sacrifice something to realize your big dream? It's not enough to follow your big dream, right? You need to risk something or sacrifice something, right, to try to get your big dream to happen. But if you do that, you get an additional experience point. Did you travel through at least 1 hex on the travel map that you had not visited before, right? So the game is rewarding you with experience points for exploring. Did you overcome 1 or more dangerous events using violent or non-violent means? So whether you get into a fight or you sneak in and do a raid or hoodwink them or, betray someone or, outthink them, outfox them. Either way, if you can overcome a dangerous event, you get an experience point, but you can only get 1. So, it doesn't matter if you take on the entire, Red Army, Just worth one experience points. Did you risk your life for the PC who is your buddy? So this is the game saying these are the things that we want you to do because this is the way that you advance in this game. And most of the time when we're playing TTRPGs, we're doing it because we want to advance. We want to progress. But we don't just want to progress in the story. We do want to do that, but we also want to progress in the system. We want to level up. This game doesn't have levels, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. In fact, I think that's where TTRPGs are a unique medium, is that they do combine the narrative elements of storytelling with the mechanical elements of a game. It's a role-playing game, and I think it's very important to do that. All right. So we get this experience points at the end of a session. So we get 1 to 6 points, and we can spend our XP. So we can increase our skills. So this is going to increase the rating of our skills. If we want to go to A, if we want to go to D, it's 5. So if we have no skill, just going to a D is 5. Going to a C is 10. Going to a B is 15. Going to an A is 20. So getting up high level is going to require a lot of experience points. And then we have these specialties. These always cost 10, but you need a teacher, either a PC or an NPC who already knows the specialty, and they need to instruct you. And they have to actually make a persuasion roll. And if they fail, you don't learn anything, and they can try again. All right, so specialties might be more like our talents, our powers, our feats. After each session in which you made a cuff roll and succeeded, you have a chance to increase your cuff. Roll the base die for your cuff. If the result is a 1, increase your cuff 1 step. So this is very similar to like Dragonbane's skill up, in a weird way. It's like as your cuff goes up, right, you're going to roll higher. You're going to roll a D8, and then you're going to roll a D10. So the odds of you rolling a 1 get lower and lower. So it becomes harder and harder to increase your coolness under fire rating. So it's kind of a cool diminishing returns progression there. But it doesn't cost you anything. You just needed to keep your cool because it's not enough to roll it. You have to roll and succeed. And then you get 1 chance at the end of the session to maybe increase your coolness. Oh, okay. Interesting. However, becoming cooler under fire can make you emotionally numb. Each time your cuff increases, roll your base die for empathy. If the result is 6 or higher, your empathy rating is reduced by 1 step permanently. So a high empathy character who keeps seeing some shit, he's going to lose that empathy eventually. It's kind of cool. And then we have this element about changing unit morale. So we discussed as a group if our unit morale has changed as a result of the session. If one of the more of these events have taken place, our morale increases. If we've been in combat and we defeated our enemies, if we've helped other people along the way, if we've traveled at least 1 hex on the travel map towards a goal, if the PC and the unit with the highest command skill increase their skill. Alternatively, if one or more of the following events have taken place, decrease. If we lost somebody or somebody got fatally wounded, if they're starving, if they're dehydrated, if they're sleep deprived, or if they're hypothermic. Okay, so basically, if you have any condition or if someone got killed, unit morale decays. On the other hand, if we made reasonable progress, unit morale increases. We also have a chance to redefine our moral code at the end of every session. Oh, only if we betray it. We can't just change it out. We can also seek our new dream, and we can also find another buddy. We can only have 1 at a time. So that could change, right? We start off the campaign. I was best friends with, Commando. And then after a few sessions, like GM Scott's character saved my life, and now GM Scott's my buddy, or we realize we're from the same hometown or something, Cool. Well, so that's player characters. So obviously we're not going to get into like each of the skills. I mean, I think they're kind of self-explanatory, which is what a good skill is, but I do want to learn a little bit about specialties. Let me see if we see anything here in the chat. Commando says that getting the dirt bike for your random equipment is the GOAT. Commando says that starting with an APC is a bit of a detriment. I agree. It's probably, it's a big walking target. The fuel costs, everything about it just seems like it'd be crazy, Mike says, I'm about 20 minutes behind. One of my pride and joys is my Fortress America with the original cover, with the art of the guy who totally looked like Saddam Hussein, which they changed right around Storm. Absolutely. I 100%. Let me see if I can find it and pull it up for the people at home. There we go. Come on, it's got to be a high high res one. Here we go. All right. Boom. All right. So this is Fortress America. And that guy on the right is totally not Saddam Hussein. Even though it looks exactly like him. But yeah, this was like when I was a kid, I was like, oh man, someday I will own this game. And I never did, unfortunately. Very cool. All right. And again, if you have any thoughts or comments or questions, feel free to drop them in there, and I'll see what I can do. All right. So how do we? So we know what all these numbers are. How do we actually succeed? Okay. We roll the dice. So there's 12 core skills in the game. When you perform an action, you first describe what your character does or do. Then you grab 2 dice, one for your skill level and one for the base attribute that is connected to that skill. These 2 dice are called your base dice. The type of base dice you roll is dependent on your level. We know this. It's either going to be a D6, D8, D10, or D12. All right. And we're going to roll them. So, for example, if we're rolling close combat, we're going to be rolling with our close combat skill die, which could be nothing, by the way, and our strength die. So we're going to be, most of the time, we're going to be rolling 2 dice, but a lot of times we might be only rolling 1 if we don't have any ranking in that skill. So to succeed with your action, you must roll 6 or higher on at least 1 dice used in the roll. A roll of 6 or higher is called a success and is marked in the rules with the crosshairs symbol. Got it. Okay. So on a D6, we need to roll a 6, right? And on a D12, well, we need to roll 6 or higher. So we have a lot more chances. And obviously, you get 2 bites at the apple if you have a skill ranking. Obviously, the best case scenario is where you're very skilled and you're very naturally gifted in that attribute, because then you're going to have the greatest chance to roll a 6 or higher. This accomplishes much of the same goal as the D6 dice pools from Year Zero Engine, fundamentally. A roll of 10 or higher on a single die, which can only come up, obviously, with a D10 or D12, counts as 2 successes. Okay. This means that you could potentially roll up to 4 successes with a single dice roll. So if you had a D10 and a D12 and you rolled a 10 and an 11, you'd get 2 and 2. With bonus successes beyond the first one, you can achieve additional effects. Okay, so there we go. So we're basically, in this game, we will either get 1, 2, 3, or 4 successes. The art of failure. If you roll no successes, something goes wrong and you fail to achieve your goal. Feel free to elaborate on why. They might even let a failed roll have further consequences. Failure must not stop the story completely. There must be a way forward, perhaps at the risk of cost, time, or barter, but there is still a way. The referee always has the final say. But in good Year Zero Engine fashion, one of my favorite elements of the game, you have one last chance if you really want to succeed. You can push the roll. And pushing rolls in Year Zero Engine is just what it sounds like. You push your luck. And, you basically get a reroll. The difference is it could potentially cause you problems. Your initial skill roll represents a safe and controlled action. But if you fail your initial roll, or if you want additional successes, you can lean into that action, give it everything you've got, and push your gear and yourself to the limit. This is called pushing the roll and lets you re-roll all of the dice except for those with the result of 1. Except for those with the result of 1. You must re-roll all dice not showing successes or ones. They have custom dice. And you cannot change back to the previous roll. There is also a risk. Each time you push a roll, you immediately suffer 1 point of damage if you rolled for strength, or 1 point of stress if you rolled for int or emp, for each one that you rolled on your base dice. If this damage incapacitates you, it occurs after the words. I think I like Forbidden Lands' version of this a little bit better, just because you're rolling more dice. Yeah, it's the same basic principle, right? You get a second bite at the apple, but when you do that, it's possible that any rolls of 1s are going to come back and do damage to your character. If you used a tool, such as a weapon or vehicle for a skill roll, any damage from pushing will affect that item instead of yourself and decrease its reliability rating. Okay, so if you're using a weapon, it goes, or a tool or gear, it goes against that. If you push your roll, you must also re-roll any ammo dice that don't show a explosion or bullet. Again, I think the game has custom dice, but I really don't think you need them. A 1 on ammo dice will damage your firearm and decrease its reliability rating. You can only push rolls if you're actively performing it. You can't do it for passive actions, and you can only push once. Also, in a little sidebar, it says, describe your action. Don't roll too often. Great advice. Group rolls. Others can help, and just the person who's best amongst you or best suited rolls, and the other people can help if it's relevant. It counts as, if a roll fails, it counts as failure for all of you. You are not allowed to try one time each. All right, modifiers. So we can have modifiers, because remember, this is strictly a 6 or higher. So by definition, all rolls are the same. So is there a way to account for something being more difficult, or is there a way for something to be easier? Sure. Sometimes external factors help you to succeed. Such modifiers will step up one of your base dice to a better die, from a D6 to a D8. Other times, something hampers your actions. This will downstep one of your dice. You can get modifiers to skill rolls in several different ways. Specialties, okay. The difficulty of the action itself and help from others. So there's 3 ways we can modify this. We can have specialties that specifically apply. The action itself could be very difficult or easy, and we can get help from other ones. A +1 means upgrade a base die 1 step. A +2 means 2 steps, and so on. A -1 means 1 step. They can all be applied. They're cumulative, and a +1 and a +2 and a -1 add up to a total of +1. When stepping up and down, try to balance your dice as much as possible. Step up a lower die first and downstep a higher base dice. You can never go beyond 2d12s, and if you downstep past 2d6, remove a die, and you can never go below 1d6. So there you go. The lowest you can be is a single d6. Okay. So in Forbidden Lands and dice pool based Year Zero engines, right? You build a dice pool of d6, and you're looking for 6s. And if the GM says this is really easy or it's really hard, you either add or remove dice from your dice pool. So if the action's very easy, the GM could say, oh, and you're being helped and you're aided, add 3 dice to your dice pool, giving you more chances to get a 6. Or they could say, this is a really difficult action, remove 2 dice from your dice pool. So now you have less dice to roll. It's kind of the same basic idea. This has this gives me like Earth Dawn vibes, right? Which has this idea of steps. And of course, it wouldn't be a free league game if they didn't say, and if you're curious, this is how the percent chances actually work out. Also, someone can help you, and for each person helping you, you get a +1 modifier. No more than 3 people could help you at a time, and in combat, that counts as one of your actions. All right, so basic stuff here. Sometimes you have to win an opposed roll, and that means you need to roll more successes than your opponent. You must roll more successes than your adversary. Every success your adversary rolls eliminates one of your successes. So if you roll 1 success and your adversary rolls 1 success, you have failed because they have canceled each other out. You need to roll more successes than your adversary, which is similar in other Year Zero engine games. Also, we'll have gear. Gear can be useful, can give us a positive modifier to our skill roll. Makes sense, right? If we have the right tool for the job, it's going to make it easier. However, they have reliability ratings, which is a bit like hit capacity. A typical piece of gear in good condition has a reliability rating of 5, but flimsy or badly built gear can start with a lower rating. Broken or worn out gear can be repaired using the tech skill and spare parts. Damage to vehicles is even more complex. Yikes. Interesting. Okay. So we talk about the skills in the game. Again, we're not going to go into these too deeply, but close combat is attacking in close combat. Heavy weapons is our machine guns and rocket launchers and tank rounds. It's interesting. So firing a machine gun is not agility. It's strength. That's cool. I actually like that, right? If you fire a heavy weapon or a rocket launcher, it's a strength attack. I love it. I actually really do love that. But if they're mounted, okay, look, when using heavy weapons to fire mounted weapons, use agility instead of strength. And when firing artillery, use intelligence. That's cool. It's a little subtle thing. It's very simulation-ist, but it's also kind of gamist. I don't know. I just like the idea. I mean, obviously, a machine gun still has to be aimed, right? But they're like, no, the limiting factor is how strong you are. Stamina is used to resist, disease, coldness, cling to life. Driving is cars, driving vehicles, ranged combat, hand pistols, bows, submachine guns, yada yada. Recon is kind of like our, perception. Survival is, getting by, finding food, finding shelter. Tech is used to repair our gear and scavenge. Command, you can use the command skill to help a person who is incapacitated by stress get back on their feet. So if somebody gives up too much stress, you can almost think of them as becoming like shell shocked. They're out of the. If you take too much stress, your character is essentially incapacitated. You're out of the fight. But someone with a good command, can be like, on your feet, soldier, load your weapon, fire at the enemy, acquire your target, and that can get somebody back on their feet. This is shades of Rally from Dragonbane. Medical aid is if somebody gets blown up, and then persuasion is used to, talk to people and convince them to help you out. All right, specialties are just +1 in a certain situation. That means it increases our die by 1 step. So, for example, our Ronson, that character that we saw, had the machine gunner specialty. So they get a +1 modifier only to heavy weapons rolls when they are firing all types of machine guns only. So if they went to go fire a missile launcher, they would not get this +1. So pretty basic. I mean, there's like 4 here, like 8 here, 6 here, 8 here. I mean, there's a bunch. I mean, obviously having a higher base die in general is better because it applies to everything, but obviously it gets more expensive, right? This is only 10 XP for a specialty, whereas getting a B rating is 15 XP, and then going to an A rating is 20 XP. So it becomes quite expensive. But you give up, right? But you give up the equity of being a little bit more specialized, and now that skill isn't as useful broadly. All right. Let me check up with chat here real quick. KC says that's not even a character. That's just straight up Saddam. Absolutely. I mean, that is very much. He died like a little bitch. So fuck Saddam Hussein. What's up, Spider Matt? Good to see you. Kamikaze. Any plans for the Knights to play a short Twilight 2K campaign? I recently found your channel and have started a root game after watching campaign. Kamikaze, probably not. But you know what? You never know. I would love to get more games back onto the channel. The Knights are kind of disbanded, right? Our studio is mothballed, and the root studio that you saw, right? That is all in storage. We didn't get kicked out, but they raised our rent and we couldn't really afford it. We've been sort of trying to figure out what's going on. And then I've had a lot of personal challenges this year. So, getting a game to the table, or to the stream, to the channel has not been something that we've been able to do. But it's a lot of fun, and I like playing games, and I like sharing games with you all. And so, I don't know if it'll be Twilight 2K, but also, especially Kamikaze, to be completely honest with you, we just finished up a Forbidden Lands campaign in our home game, and Forbidden Lands is kind of like the fantasy version of this. So there's a lot of similarities there. All right. So we've got Chapter 4, Combat and Damage, and then we've got Chapter 5, Weapons, Vehicles, and Gear, and Chapter 6, Travel. So real quick, let's kind of blaze through here, but most Year Zero engine games basically use a slow and a fast action. So basically on your turn, you get a slow action and a fast action. You can easily think of this as you get a standard action and a move action. And, standard action is like I'm going to fight, I'm going to shoot, I'm going to do something, cast a spell, obviously not in this game. And then your fast action is something more like get a piece of gear out, reposition myself on the battlefield, etc. So generally in these games, you just get those two actions, slow and fast. And then there's also, again, free actions as well. So we can see here, if you want to get an item out from your backpack, it's a slow action. If you want to persuade someone, make an attack, grapple, shoot a firearm, clear a jam, aim with your sniper rifle, shoot a bow, aim a howitzer, direct, indirect fire, first aid, whatever, enter or get out of a vehicle, that's slow action. That's like your big action for the turn. And then fast actions are things like grab some cover, run, improve your cover, cross through a barrier, crawl, get up, shove someone, retreat, aim, pull a pin on a grenade, get up on a bike, start driving, right? So in this game, we could totally drive a vehicle and then with our other hand out the window, shoot our submachine gun. Important to note because they're different actions. The game talks about using a hex grid. I approve. Hex grids, the best grids. Absolutely. Again, initiative is just used by, there's a deck of cards with numbers 1 through 10. You draw them and you go in order. Much like other card-based games, you can exchange your initiative card with another player whose turn has not come up yet, so you can swap to them. However, one of the cool things about Free League, they do this in Dragonbane, they do this in Forbidden Lands, is there is usually a way, because, when you get attacked, there's no like armor class, right? When someone attacks you, they make a ranged, someone shooting at, the aforementioned character who's driving and shooting out the window with their submachine gun. When they go to shoot me, they just make a ranged combat check. And all they need is a 6 or higher to get a hit. So my ability to, dodge or whatever, doesn't really come into the equation. Armor in this game is more absorbative than it is preventative. And so frequently in these games, they give you an option to sort of dodge or, leap out of the way. And you can do this even in when it's not your turn. So it's like a reaction. But the problem is it takes one of your actions from your turn. And if you already took your turn and you already used both of your actions, then you don't have anything left to do these sort of, blocks or, whatever. So, for example, if an enemy attacks you in close combat, you can choose to roll close combat to block their attack. And this is a fast action. And you have to declare this before they roll. But for every success you roll, you eliminate a success from their roll. So if somebody attacks you, they just have to get a success to hit you. But you could choose to block. But if you do that, you're using up some of your actions from your turn as well. So blocking does break the turn order, but it does count against your 2 actions available. For every block you perform, you get 1 less action when it is your turn. So that's pretty cool. And obviously there's a bunch of other stuff here. You can aim, if you don't aim, your attack counts as a quick shot and suffers a negative modifier. So, pistols get a -1, all other ranged weapons get a -2. So there's some like simulationist elements here, right? Like the idea that if you're shooting from the hip, it's gonna, you're gonna not be as accurate, right? But on the other hand, if you have your pistol in your hand, you take a moment to aim and then shoot, then you don't get the -1. Information to that end. So lots of stuff here. We can also see some of the modifiers. Remember, these are going to increase or decrease the difficulty to hit somebody. So if the attacker is prone, then, meaning if I'm on the ground, I'm trying to hit somebody in melee, I get -2 to my dice. But if my target is prone, I get +2. So that could take a D8 to a D12, right? And we need a 6 or higher. So that's a big change. That's a big shift. I mean, defenseless target takes a D6 all the way up to a D12. I mean, that's huge. I mean, that gives you a massive increase in your chance to hit. So yeah, pretty basic here. Well, I say basic, but this is pretty crunchy. you know, for a free league game, certainly for like if you're used to Dragonbane. I mean, you can see here all of the different modifiers for being at different ranges, for aiming or not aiming, for calling your shot, moving, firing from a moving vehicle. Is the target moving? Are they small? Are they large? Do you have an elevated position? Darkness, rain, smoke, you know. So now this isn't like super in depth, but there's a lot here, you know. So I'm going to say generally. Now, here's the crazy thing about games like this, though. Like, if you go into this kind of game and you're getting into fights all the time, your characters are probably not going to make it very long because you are going to get chewed up and you're going to get tore up. So it's a kind of, in some ways, it's kind of a lot of rules for something that, you know, may not be coming up that much. But to be clear, you know, if you're playing this kind of game, as I said, especially as you move into modern gaming and, you know, sci-fi gaming, you know, the importance of gear porn and the importance of simulating how guns work and stuff becomes much more important. It just kind of comes with the territory. So while this isn't necessarily my favorite thing, and I'll be fully honest with you, modern day RPGs have never appealed to me, modern or otherwise, right? I'm sorry, military or otherwise. I just don't like modern day RPGs. I just kind of don't. I never have. I don't hate this though. Like, this is the kind of stuff that, you know, if you're into this, it's like, yeah, you're kind of into this. It's like, this isn't big damn heroes, right? If my character is driving my Humvee down the road and I've got one hand on the wheel and one hand on my submachine gun and I'm shooting at a target outside of my window on a dirt bike, yeah, I'm going to be lucky if I hit anything. Right. And this game is going to give me a shitload of penalties because it's going to say, well, you know, you didn't aim, so you get a -1. They're at medium range, so they're at -2. You're firing from a moving vehicle, so -4. They're a moving target, so -5. You know, it's like, yeah, unless you're like one of the best shots in the universe, you're basically going to miss because of course you are. Right. Like, I mean, that's really tough. So it's realistic, you know. Yeah, Commander said, yeah. So I had the Forbidden Lands GM screen, and it was very helpful because what modifiers they did have in that game were pretty much listed there as well. Nick says that, yeah, this is Free League's more simulationist, less emulationist game, and I'm down for it. It fits the setting too. Yes, this is one of the more simulationist heavy Free League games I have seen. You know, I've read Symbaroum, I've read, you know, Dragonbane, I've read Forbidden Lands, I've read. Parts of Alien, parts of Coriolis, parts of Vaesen. And so this definitely is standing out to me as being very heavy. Yeah, I even say it does have elements of a skirmish war game. You know, this start, you know, especially with the hex grids, it starts to feel like you're playing, you know, Battletech or something, you know, because there's like a lot of different modifiers. And I mean, in fact, you know, it says target hex terrain, you know, like it almost sounds like something that would come out of a Battletech game. So, but I think that's part and parcel for the game, you know, like it is a military kind of survival game, right? If I had to describe it, it's a military survival game. I mean, look at the chapters. We've got this big chapter on combat. Okay. And look, you can even see here stuff for, you know, I'm not going to get into it because this is awesome, but you know, you have Overwatch and, you know, basically readying a shot, to keep an Overwatch label, you know, thing, ammunition dice, weapons jamming, you know, suppressive fire, make them, you know, have to make a coolness under fire rating, or are they going to get spooked and stuff like that? Spread panic, you know, otherwise they get suppressed, you know. This is a much more tactical, crunchy combat game than we've ever seen before. I mean, this, you know, the direction of explosions, how likely you are to be hit based off of where the target was. Yeah. Landmines, anti-tank mines, IEDs. I mean, this is pretty dang crunchy. The different, you know, we've got different types of ammo. We've got high explosive rounds. We've got heat rounds. We've got AP rounds. We've got white phosphorus. You know, we got some Willy Pete. We got chem rounds. We've got illumination rounds, right? So just there's a lot of gear porn here. There's a lot of weapon porn here. I'm not gonna lie, there is. It's too much for me, but I mean, I think it's cool, and I respect that it's doing it. And I will say, if I was really into this and I really wanted to do this, this is the kind of game system I'd want to do it in. Maybe that or Traveler, but Traveler's obviously sci-fi. Indirect fire, the whole get. So lots of stuff here on injuries and death. And we can see here, by the way, that if you do get reduced to 0, that there is a chance that you have to make a death roll. And some of these injuries can kill you outright. And, in Forbidden Lands, you roll D66. So you roll a D6 and a D6. And a lot of times the instant death roll only occurs on a 66 or a 65. So it's pretty rare. But you can see here in this game, if you roll a 10 on a D10, you're instantly killed. So anytime your character, by the way, remember our characters have like 3, 4, or 5 hit points, right? 6 hit points. So if you go to 0 and your character, when your character drops to 0, depending on where they got hit, they have a 10% chance of just dying instantly. Same thing with the torso. Oh, luckily you cannot instantly die if you get hit in the legs, which, to be fair. But I should also point out, for those of you who are not familiar with these games, a lot of these other injuries are still lethal. Okay. They just take a little bit longer. So there's a chance that your party might be able to come in and save you by, stopping the bleeding. So for example, if we get a 9 on our head, it's a crushed windpipe, and we are going to die in 1 round, but my party has 1 round to try to save me. If I have a brain hemorrhage, they have a couple of minutes. If I have a cracked skull, they have a couple of hours. And if they can manage to repair me, or, manage to medically treat me, I won't die. Otherwise, the default assumption with any of these is that, yes, you die. So, yikes. And also, by the way, like, even if you don't get killed, right? If you're, if you crack your skull and they manage to save you from dying, you're still going to have a debilitating effect for potentially weeks. So it's it's kind of a grim and gritty game for sure. Not to mention, of course, all the stuff that could happen not from people shooting at you, but from the environment, like being dehydrated and being sleep deprived, right? Which can further cause damage to you. Mental trauma can occur, right? Every time something happens, right? Seeing your buddy, if your buddy, the person you choose as your buddy, if you see them get a lethal critical injury, you take 2 stress. If you witness a massacre, if you get tortured, you take stress. It's like, it fucks you up. Are these the crit chat? No. So Casey, the way this game works, they're called critical effects, but if our character had a hit capacity of 5 and we took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points of damage, then our character becomes incapacitated. All right. So, maybe not. Oh, this is actually even more complicated than I thought. Okay. You can actually roll multiple D10s. Holy crap. All right. So, it's not enough to just get crit. It's enough that what weapon crit you. So when you attack an enemy, if the damage you inflict is equal to or higher than the crit threshold of your weapon, after mitigation and armor, you inflict a critical injury on that enemy. The same goes, of course, when the enemy attacks you. However, if the damage of an attack exceeds the weapon's crit threshold by 2 steps or more, then it's severe, and you roll 2 d10s on the critical injury chart and use the higher result. And if it's 4 steps higher, you roll 3 d10s and use the higher result. So, so if you get hit by a rocket, or something, if you get hit by like a grenade or a rocket, the chances are pretty much good that you're just going to die. Right? Basically. That's kind of the way it goes. I don't know. I'm guessing, right? Based off of what this thing is here. But if you're rolling 3 d10 and using the higher result, you're going to get your average roll is going to be like 8 or 9 or 10. So you're going to be very close to just lethal, or dying in a round or two. But yeah, brutal. And again, that's if the damage we inflict is equal to or higher than the crit threshold of our weapon after mitigating by armor and cover. So in this game, armor and cover absorb essentially damage, right? So let's take a look. Let's hop over into weapons because it's almost 9 o'clock here. We've got, submachine guns, heavy machine guns, general purpose machine guns, light machine guns. I didn't know there were this many types of machine guns. We've got anti-tank guided missiles. We have anti-tank rocket launchers, regular rocket launchers. I'm not much of like a military weapon guy. We've got the club and the bat and the spike bat. All right. So again, reliability is the reliability rate. Remember if our weapon takes damage, wear and tear can reduce this damage. And that can basically our weapons can eventually break if they don't get repaired or managed. Rate of fire, which indicates how many ammo dice can be used in an attack. Damage, the base damage rating, i.e. how many points of damage your opponent suffers if your attack is successful. If you roll extra successes, you deal 1 extra point of damage per extra success rolls. So basically a weapon does 1 point of damage, 2 points of damage, 3 points of damage. And then for each additional success we got on those dice, remember, we're rolling 2 dice most of the time. Any 6s or higher is a success. Any 10s or higher is 2 successes. So potentially we could roll a 10 and 11 and get 4 successes. And that would mean that we got 3 more successes than we needed. So we would inflict 3 extra points of damage. So let's say that we did that with our spiked bat. Well, the spiked bat does 2 damage baseline. We would be adding 3 points of damage to it. So at 5 points of damage, any character with 5 hit points or less, which is a lot of characters in the game, are already going to be incapacitated. But furthermore, the crit rating of the spiked bat is 3, and we just did 5 damage. So not only is that a critical hit, it's a severe critical hit, and we're going to roll with 2d10. Yikes. All right. But that's a bat. So let's go look up something crazy. Let's go look up. And again, the gear porn here is, this chapter is huge. There's just so many different, things here. Yeah. So if we look at like an assault rifle, the damage is 2, and the crit is 3. So the moment you do 1 extra success, you're doing a critical hit. Look at this thing. All right, this is a belt-fed automatic grenade launcher, the MK-19. It fires 40 millimeter grenades. The damage is 3. The crit rating is 3. That means if you hit somebody with this, it's a crit. Like automatically, like they getting blown up. Obviously their armor could absorb it, their cover could absorb it. But by and large, if you just hit somebody out in the open, they're taking a critical hit. There's a chance that you could instantly kill somebody every time you shoot this weapon at them. And unless they have cover or some sort of awesome protective. And yeah, that makes sense. This thing's a fucking automatic grenade launcher. I didn't even know those things existed. So lots of weapons. Lots of weapons. Look at this thing. The damage is 6 and the crit is 3. That means baseline, this thing does a severe crit. Obviously it's designed to take out weapons or vehicles, but still, it's crazy. If you hit somebody with a freaking bazooka, they are going to blow up. That's what's going to happen. It's crazy. So this was just American weapons. We also have a whole section on Soviet weapons. We have a whole section on Swedish weapons, Polish weapons, other weapons. And now we're getting into hand grenades. We also have artillery, mortars, howitzers. I don't even know what the difference is between those. All the different types of ammunition that we could have. This is, we can't forget about mines. So obviously, this game is obviously trying to, have that sort of real world touchstone, right? It's trying to, take this alternate history, the mines, and so, obviously I'm one of those people who I don't even think a game should have like more than like 10 weapons, right? Like I think a game should have like sword, big sword, axe, hammer, bow, crossbow, throwing weapon, little sword or dagger, I don't know, but, I just think everything. I don't need longsword, falchion, cutlass, rapier. I don't need all that. Like, just it's a sword, it's enough for me. So this is unbelievably unnecessary for someone like me, and I quite frankly wouldn't understand any of this and really understand any of this stuff. But there's a lot of military people, gun culture people, but also just people who are interested in military history. And this to them is going to be very cool because it's very, accurate. But let's be very clear here. This is very much shades of reminiscent of, Gygax in the first edition AD&D of having like all the different pole arms, the Guzarm Volge and, all those crazy pole arms that like nobody ever in a million years was ever going to use, in their campaign before, right? Like nobody who needs all these pole arms. Nobody needs all these pole arms, right? Like it's too much. So anyways, the game does not need that many pole arms. Yes, the Bec de Corbin. What in chat? All right, everybody in chat, tell me your favorite pole arm. Alex says Alex, don't get me started on Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I'm well aware. I have commented on that. I'm sure the number has already grown, but like back when we were doing the one thing, I was like talking about just how many crazy, like just the number of equipments and a number of weapons. It's unbelievable. It's way too much. 306, and that's not even a military game, Alex. That's a Pathfinder 2 game. But good evening, Mr. Boothby. Good to see you. I will be honest with you, Nick. Yeah, like this game, elements of it are very sim hard, but there's also a sim lightness to it because it is just a year zero engine game. So yeah, a game like this, you might usually expect to be like 250, 300 pages, but it's, comes in at 150. And that there's sections of the whole thing that are really dedicated to like the skills and the travel. It's not just, fight, shoot. All right. So GM Scott is going on with the Bec de Corbin. Mr. Squid is giving it for the Lucran hammer. Nick says the spear, the king of all weapons, right? Ken says the glaive, and I got to be honest with you, I'm a fan of the glaive. Also, after playing Legend of the Five Rings, I will throw out the naginata as well, because what's cooler than a katana, and then sticking a katana on the end of a spear? Oh, look at that cephalopod. I always like the naginata. Yeah, buddy.
I am strong.
I have a fondness for the halberd as well. I'm a big fan of the halberd as well. JP had a kobold with a poisonous frog stuck on the end of a pole. That was fun. That is a pole. That is a pole weapon by definition. So that's either a great idea or an incredibly stupid idea. But I kind of love it. Yeah, Alex, it is focused on the thing it's simulating. I completely agree with you. And again, we even said this before. This game is pretty sim heavy compared to, this is a far cry from Dragonbane. Okay. If Dragonbane is over here and maybe like standard year zero engine games are over here, then this game is definitely, over here for sure. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It might be the thing that you like. I mean, again, there are just like Traveler has just like endless books of weapons and gears and different spaceship configurations and different jump drives and just like all this like, just pages and pages and pages of gear porn. That is a big deal for some people. It really is. The gear porn. It's not a big deal for me, but that I'm not everybody. Not every game should be made for me. So here we get into the stuff about the vehicles. And this looks like a Warhammer old Warhammer 40K. You've got front armor ratings, side armor ratings, rear armor ratings. You've got fuel types, fuel capacity, it's cargo capacity, crew, combat speed, travel speed, and then here we go. Here's all the different vehicles and weapons. Or if you start your campaign with a tank, I got to be honest with you, that's kind of sweet. Look at that. Front armor 11 or 12 for the M1A1 Abrams. The pole frog does sound kind of metal. Naginata is just a glaive for weebs, pretty much, but it is cool. Just got caught up. I'm a huge glaive fan, according to Sean. After my first ever 5e character got by one on my second session. Mad respect. Well, you know what, Sean? That's a very Sean answer. Got by one. Yeah, my character died, and after that, I had to give the weapon respect. Duncan is completely a tangent here. But yes, I prefer that as well. I like the idea that like there's a generic format, because I do like the idea that a sword is different than a hammer, but I like the idea that then that sword has 3 slots and you can customize it. And maybe there's some traits that can go on swords, but can't go on hammers. And maybe there's some traits that can go on daggers and swords, but they can't go on, axes and so on and so forth. So, and then you can just build whatever you want and call it whatever you want. And it's fine, anyways. And then if you want to make like an advanced weapon, it just has 4 slots. I mean, that's kind of what they did with Pathfinder 2 anyways, but they just pre-designed it all instead of giving you like actual Build-A-Bear. And I think they should just given us Build-A-Bear. KC says, I never played Starfinder, but one of my players talked about the gun porn from that game for every session for like 4 months. Yes. Again, as you move up, okay, this game obviously is very heavy, but as you move up from fantasy, and although Pathfinder 2nd Edition, again, does have like 360 weapons, but to be fair, like 80% of them are like crazy nonsense, not realistic at all. As you move up from like fantasy into modern and then into sci-fi, like the gear porn just gets, and the gun porn just gets higher and higher and higher and higher as like, that's the reason I'm playing this game. It's true. All right. Big section on gear. If you're one of those people who really wants to know the difference between the BTR 80 Soviet APC and the BTR 70, God bless you. Here's some Swedish military trucks. A nice tight little Volvo. Get the job done. Reliable. I'll take a Volvo in the aftermath of World War III. Put me down for the TGB 11. And then we've got gear, communicate. I mean, look at this. I mean, this is a lot of gear. There's a lot of gear. Generators, fuel stills. Okay. This actually makes some amount of sense. To compensate, as the global oil and refinery supply system has collapsed, traditional fossil fuels are very rare in Europe. I mean, that makes sense. Also, something that Vincent Baker wrote about is that, there's like one of the things in like Apocalypse World is like, the world used to be something and then it died and they left us nothing except, gas and bullets. So basically the idea is like, it's a world where all that they have left is gas and bullets. What does that sound like? Mad Max, because that's what Apocalypse World is trying to go for. But Vincent Baker wrote in a sidebar, maybe in his 2nd edition, he's like, after the game came out, somebody pointed out to me that, the gasoline, even well preserved and well stored, would vaporize and evaporate within like the first couple of years. It does not store well. And it would just, eventually basically completely be gone. And with no source of refinement, there would be no gas. Pretty quickly after it stops getting refined. But to compensate for the gasoline and diesel shortfalls, most vehicles have been converted to run on an alcohol fuel like methanol and ethanol, which are much easier to make and produce. Have I gone over how vehicle combat works yet? No, Duncan, I did not. I was going to do travel, but we could take a look at vehicle combat real quick. All right. So getting in and out is a slow action, but a bike is fast action. That's cool. Starting a vehicle is a fast action. Your combat speed of your vehicle indicates how many 10-meter hexes you can safely drive with a single fast action. Only pavement hexes count as on-road. You can drive in any direction you want, and you can end the movement facing any direction you want. So vehicle movement has facing. All right. So vehicle movement is basically, I mean, this is BattleTech. I mean, this really is BattleTech. I mean, like you have a front arc, you have side arc, you have rear arc, you have different armor ratings depending on the arc of your character, of your vehicle. So I mean that is really basically, I mean, it's on a hex grid. I mean, it basically is BattleTech at this point. I mean, you're not in a mech, although it'd be kind of cool if you were. See, this is my thought process. Like if I'm going to go through all the things of figuring out my facing and my thing and all this combat thing, then I want a mech. You know, I don't want some lame vehicle. You know, I don't want some lame Volvo with a machine gun mounted on top. I want a mech. All right. So we drive and then we have to end it. We have to pick a facing. And then let's see here. Yep. We have to pick a facing, rotating our token accordingly. Vehicles have a reliability rating. If we push our driving roll, we could potentially damage our vehicle. If we push it down to 0, it breaks down and becomes inoperable. So we can, you know, kind of push our driving and maybe fuck up our vehicle a little bit. Let's see here. We can pop smoke. We can, you know, attacking a vehicle is easy because it's big. But firing from a vehicle gives you lots of penalties, as we've discussed. There's a whole thing here on angle of attack. Sheesh. Most vehicles have armor, which is different on the front, sides, and rear. If the base damage rating of the weapon is 2 steps lower than the modified armor level of attack, the attack is fully deflected no matter what you roll. Okay, so this is the way the game says you can't blow up a tank with a handgun, right? If the weapon rating is 2 or more lower than the armor rating, you just can't. It will be deflected. And then if you do damage, then we got to figure out penetration damage. Your vehicle could be hit and cause secondary problems and systems to your fuel, the engine, the suspension, the cargo, the driver, the gunner, the passenger, the commander, or even the radio. So again, a pretty dang simulationist heavy check here. Yeah, I got to admit, angle of attack being in there is crazy. For sure. So you actually, like, you know, that's some that is definitely some BattleTech stuff. Sidon says, be careful that you don't have some Soviet soldier dump their mag into the back of your truck and hit your ammo depot. Leads to a bad situation. Yeah, my party lost all of their shit because of that. I mean, you know, hey, you know, sucks to suck, I guess, you know. All right. So the last thing I want to touch on is the travel rules. Sebastian asking the really important question. Mr. Squid asks, but are there water pressure rules? Well, I could tell you this, Mr. Squid. I saw that there is something about water travel. Unfortunately, it just says that we need to have a boat or a raft. No water supplement. No water supplement yet. All right. So for those of you who haven't played a Year Zero engine game or Dragonbane or especially Forbidden Lands, the travel system is, you know, it's a hexploration system. The game, you know, it does not gloss over the travel section of the game. By the way, this is another brilliant piece of art. So that is a very nice piece of art. So so the game does not, you know, it does not just abstract away traveling. And like I showed before earlier, you know, the game, this is the Swedish map and this is the Polish map, but you know, you could also use your own hex map and make your own stuff. But the assumption of this game, right, is that you are moving from ruined town to ruined town, across rivers, through rubbled, cratered roads, through wilderness, mountains, hillsides, forests, and you know, the going is not easy. It's not just something that we just hand wave and say, yeah, you get there in 2 days, right? This is not a point crawl type system. And I like point crawls, but this is not a point crawl system, right? This is a hex crawl system. And so when you're traveling, there are modifiers for how fast you can travel based off of the type of terrain that you're in. And then the type of terrain you're in is also not only going to affect how fast you can travel or how fast you can drive, or if driving is even an option, but also how easy is it going to be to hunt for food, to forage for food and supplies, to scrounge around for bits of tech and gear, right? If you're out in the middle of the woods, well, it's going to be really tough. It's going to be slow going, and it's going to be tough to drive a vehicle through there. But you're much more likely to be able to hunt, say, some food or forage some herbal goods. On the other hand, if you're in the middle of the mountains, it's going to be really hard to scrounge up some gear or tech because it's pretty remote and it's pretty, desolate. And if you look, you're like, wow, it looks like it would really suck to be in the mountains. Yeah, it would really suck to be in the mountains. It's really tough. And you can also even see too here, the distance that the encounter starts, when an encounter starts. So random encounters are a big part of this game. It gives you a deck with 52 cards, and obviously you're free to, create more if you want. But, the idea is that as you're traveling through these wilderness, there's a good chance that you're going to run into people. You're going to run into brigands, marauders, refugees, enemy forces, disorganized units that have gone AWOL, crazy cannibals. I don't know, it's a sandbox. It could be anything. And remember, there's no point to this game except to survive and maybe try to do something, follow your character's passions, right? Follow your character's big dream. And why are you doing that? Well, because naturally your PC wants to follow their big dream. That's what they want. But also you as a player want to get experience points for your character so you can level up their stats and stuff. So again, the game is sort of working on both ends. And this is very much, taken from Forbidden Lands as well. Depending on the season, you get more hours of light or more hours of dark and dusk. As an example of this game being more simulationist, Forbidden Lands simply breaks it down into light and dark. Here we get light and dusk, right? And they note here that this is the Nordic region, which is very high latitude. So in the summertime, it doesn't even actually ever really get dark. I've never been to Sweden or Norway, but when I did the Appalachian Trail, I was up right around the first days of summer. So that's like the longest days of the year. And I was up in northern Maine, which is about as far north as I've ever been. And I remember, even though Maine, like Ohio's here and like Ohio's here and like Maine's like here. Ish. I don't know if that's relatively right, but I remember being there around the first day of summer in northern Maine, and it got dark at like 10:30, 11 o'clock, and it got light again at like 4 in the morning or like 4:30 in the morning. It was crazy. So how do you travel? How do you hex? Well, you pick a direction, and then you start going, and everybody has to take an action when they are moving. Now, most of the time, if you're walking on foot or you're driving in a vehicle, you're going to be marching or driving. And there's not a whole lot else that you can do while you're marching or driving. But this is a game where resources are tough to come by: food, water, supplies. So you can't always travel. Sometimes you have to stop. Sometimes you have to gather food or wood or grain if you want to make fuel. You need to hunt for food. You need to forage for edible plants and herbs. You need to scrounge for scrap. And not only can you not do this while moving, you can't do this in a vehicle. You have to be out on foot. If you're near a river or a lake, you can fish. The story of our Forbidden Lands campaign is one of fishing. And then furthermore, you need to make camp. You need to cook. You need to set up watches and keep watches. You need to rest and sleep and explore. So it's not as simple as just going, we move 20 miles a day, subtract a ration. The game is much more complex than that. And there's going to be times where you're going to be doing a lot of traveling. And then there's going to be times where you kind of stay put for a little while and you try to hunt and explore and maybe heal some wounds and make a camp and, build up a little bit of a pile of resources so that you can make the next, leg of your journey. So there's a strategy to it. There's a tactical element to, figuring out how to survive. There's also gameplay, and that means you're going to spend time in this section of the game. Now, I will be the first to admit, having just played Forbidden Lands, sometimes this can be very dice roll intensive. And a lot of times you have somebody who is just like making one person in the party makes a lot of dice rolls and the other people in the party don't. So, at least in Forbidden Lands, that could be a little bit of the case. So, yeah. Anyways, there's information for driving off-road. You can only march so many miles a day, but if you want to, you can push and force your march, but it might cause you damage. But maybe it's worth it if you think you're going to be able to reach the safety of a village or a safety of a town or safety of a safe house or something by nightfall. And then, if you do drive and you do take your vehicle off-road, you can have a mishap and you can blow an engine, you can break an axle. Hell, you can hit roadkill. The vehicle hits a random animal. Roll a d6 on the hunting table. The animal is killed and can be used for food, but also inflicts damage on the vehicle front equal to half of its hit capacity. So if you hit, if you hit a deer with your tank, you're probably going to be okay. But, anyways, a lot of information about stills and fuels, how to scrounge for tech, to find, bits and pieces, forage for herbs and edible food. And you can see here just D100. What did you scrounge? What do you get with the 56? You find a lawnmower. Sick. But you can break it down into 2 generic, spare parts, which are used to repair other things. So you can see here, there's a lot of, this is not a game of just shooting people. It's also a game. In fact, shooting people is probably a quick way to end up getting shot and end up getting killed. We talked about how deadly combat could be. So a lot of the game is going to be you scrounging for gear and trying to make the most of it and using this stuff as barter. Look at that. If you get a skateboard, you get +1 dice rolls if you're using mobility rolls on pavement. Sidon says, best thing one of my players found was a Toy Story 2 poster. And then we talked about hunting as well, how much food it provides. A rabbit is only 1 unit of food, but if you can kill a boar, then you could potentially bring back multiple units of food. Note, again, the kind of simulationism. You can only hunt for grouse with a shotgun, right? They're just too small to hit without a shotgun. And then when the journey is over for the day, you need to make camp. And this is also kind of in Dragonbane, this is the case. It's called bushcraft. In Forbidden Lands, it's called survival. Survival is like the GOAT skill of these games because you have to make the survival roll all the time. You're not necessarily going to be hunting for food every day, but you are almost assuredly going to be making camp every day. And that means generally you're going to make a survival roll. And if you fail that survival roll, well, then, you set up in camp, but then the referee has to roll on a mishap chart and it's a whole disaster. So, and also if you've set a camp, that means you can make a campfire and you can cook food, yada, yada. So it's all, you want to be able to make a camp. So survival roles are very important in these games for sure. So that's the end. We got some information about resting and sleeping and cooking and all this other stuff, but let's see here. Sometimes you have to sleep on the bare ground. It is possible to sleep in the wilderness without making a camp. You simply find a suitable tree to sleep under. You save the time it takes to make camp, but everyone in the group has to make a survival roll to see if they find a good spot to sleep. Failure means you didn't sleep at all, and thus you risk becoming sleep deprived. And since you didn't have a fire to keep the cold away, you all suffer the effects of cold. So basically, if you don't make camp, it's going to be, you're going to wake up sleep deprived and cold and, hypothermic. And that makes sense. The game can be brutal. It can, we were talking about how brutal the crits are. Trust me, you can get chewed up by the wilderness just as easily. And then that's that. So that is a first look at Twilight 2K, a reprint from Free League of apparently an older game. So what are my thoughts? Well, I like that it's the Year Zero engine, but taken to another level. I like that the game seems to really know what it's about. And it gives you a lot of incentives to do that. And, I should point out, the Year Zero engine is not like this universal thing. They tweak it for every game. Like Alien uses a Year Zero engine, but it's a little bit different. Forbidden Lands uses a Year Zero engine, but it's a little bit different. So this is definitely one of the more different ones. And by far and away, the crunchiest one I've ever seen. There's a lot of tech in this game, a lot of gear porn, a lot of gun porn, a lot of tank porn. And you're either into that or you're not. I don't know what to tell you. As for the subject material, the setting, it is probably inherently a darker campaign. You're going to, it's kind of like probably more on the Dark Sun side of things, right? Where this is a bad world and, this is a tough world and you're going to be making tough decisions. In fact, one of the core conceits of the game is, can you live up to your moral expectation, right? Can you live up to your ethos? Can you live up to your moral code? If you can, you get an experience point. But if you can't, sometimes survival takes priority. And that's not always the best thing that people want to talk about. All right. We wanted to get a wet score. The wet score of this game is 1, at least in the thing. And then Hardrick asked, is there coffee? Yes. One of the scrounging items you can find is instant coffee. The effect, it has D6 uses and it removes sleep deprivation if you use it. But apparently there's no ground Arabica beans. Can we get a mud score? Mud. All right. 1, 2. Mud score is 5. As far as I can tell. So yeah. Hey, thank you, Casey.
Casey Roberts tipped $20. Been lurking for a few months because life has been hectic. Just wanted to say thanks for keeping the awesome content coming. Looking forward to my role as drunk villager in Mental Health Day and hope you find some peace of mind.
Well, thank you very much for that, Casey. That's okay. Sometimes, you guys have the luxury. You guys can come and go and you can show up and you can play and you can participate in the live streams. Even our patrons, sometimes our patrons, will be active on the Discord and then they'll go away and they'll come back. That's all good. We're here for you. I'm here for you. Obviously, for me, this is very therapeutic. So I thank you all for being so patient with me as I kind of struggle bust my way through some of these suddenly new challenges for me for my health. And so it's really great that I have a cool, awesome community that we can hang out with and shoot the shit about RPGs. But I am also, Bob has been continuing to work on Dragon Tide. Obviously, I've been kind of out of the loop of it a bit, but I also am looking forward to Dragon Tide as well. Yeah, that did get cut up. Yes, the drunk villager on Dragon Tide. I knew what you were talking about. Daniel, we're almost done here. We just finished up. We went a little late. So yeah, I mean, the game really seems to lean into what it's about. If you want modern warfare, survival, or role playing, the game does it pretty well, and it's pretty crunchy, but not like as crunchy as some of like the super hard sim games, but it's pretty crunchy for Year Zero engine. I'm not going to lie. But the rule book, the core rule book's 150 pages, and honestly, like 40 of those pages, 50 of those pages, it's just gear and vehicles. So, it seems like it's very quick to make a character sheet. We saw, we saw the character sheets, pretty basic, pretty simple. You basically have a couple of skills and then your gear, and that's it, really. I imagine if you do have a vehicle, I think the game, in my mind, the game would be more fun with a vehicle, but maybe I'm just like, anthropomorphizing the vehicle a little bit, but I get that, because it's like a rallying point, and I think it's also a great source of like party challenges, because you got to take care of the vehicle, find fuel for the vehicle got destroyed, whatever. Hey, Mr. Squid coming in with a super chat. Thank you, Mr. Squid. Thank you for your 3rd super chat. I feel like this is the kind of game I think I like and then proceed to get annoyed by all the mechanics. Excited to be in the Patreon. Yeah, welcome to the Patreon. Sometimes there are games that read better than they play, but it's not always hard. It's always, it's not always easy to tell that. I think I could see, here's the thing about the mechanics. This is my general thought. I will agree that the vehicle, here's the problem and the promise with games like this. The promise is that, yes, the combat and maybe the vehicle combat is pretty detailed and it's pretty intense, but it's intense. If you've played a D20 game, you know that like combats are just a dime a dozen and you're not really caring because you're going to win. That is not the case in these games. There's no balance. There's no CR systems. There's nothing. So when you do get into combat, it is a big deal, right? It's a big deal. And that means you're not probably going to do it that much, even though the game is very complicated. So that's the promise.
Duncan DT tipped $5.
Duncan!
Appreciate another dive into a system. This one is not for me, but it has some interesting ideas.
Duncan, I agree with you. It's not for me. I agree with you completely. Thank you for the tip. It does have some interesting ideas. Here's how I know. I look at that and I go, it's not for me, but I like what they're doing with it. And if like I could see where someone who is into that sort of thing would be really into that sort of thing. And so I think that that's really a cool thing. That to me shows me that this game is well thought out, hopefully, and runs on its premise. But that premise is not for me. And the game isn't trying to be everything for everyone. So I really appreciate that. But what I was going to say about the comment about the getting excited about it is you look at all the crunch and stuff and it seems like it's a lot, but it's like it doesn't come up a lot, which is good. But the problem is when you don't do something all the time, then it's easy to forget the rules. And then when that, fight does break out, like nobody knows how any of the combat rules works because you've only been in like combat once or twice the entire campaign. And I know this because like when we did our Legend of the Five Rings campaign, we didn't have combat until like the 7th session. And nobody remembered how to fight anymore because it had been that long since they'd had to draw steel and, attack, fight. So that's the problem. The promise is that it's complicated, but it's worth it, right? It's got a lot of squeeze, but you're getting good juice out of it. But the downside is, are you going to remember all those rules? Yeah, I mean, look, I am a fan of Earth Dawn, which uses this idea of dice steps. Earth Dawn uses dice step pools, which is kind of what this is, except the dice pool is only ever 2 dice. Earth Dawn can have like 3 or 4 or 5. So I kind of like that. I personally think I prefer a D6 dice pool system. I think it's just more intuitive to me. It just feels more natural to just grab more dice or take away dice than it is to like change and swap out my dice. But I could easily be proven wrong, and I think I'd be fine with that. All right. Well, no RPG for me tomorrow because our campaign finished last week. So yeah. We're in the process of deciding what our next campaign is going to be. And of course, there's lots of talk about systems, and themes, but I kind of want to start from the idea of like, well, what do we actually want to do in this campaign? Do we want to, wield magic and swords, or do we want to, be in space? Do we want to, rather than start with the system, I want to start with like, well, what do you want out of the game? Do you guys want to do episodic adventures, or do you want some big, epic story that unfolds? Do you guys want plot armor? Do you not want plot armor? God knows we have so many, games, but I'm a little torn. I don't really know what I want to play. Obviously right now I'm having a lot of mental health issues, so it kind of is back of mind. But yeah, it's it's always an exciting opportunity to think about what games you want to play. Yeah. Well, the problem with me, Rems, is it's been so long since I've played some of the basic stuff. Like part of me is just kind of like, part of me kind of just wants to play D&D, right? Like that to me, like that, like it's been a long time since I've played D&D, right? Exactly. Like 3rd edition, it's comfort food. It's what I need right now. The mental healing. There's not a small part of me. There's not a small part of me that really wants to take, some of the stuff that Necromancer Games put out for 3rd edition and take some of the campaign areas that they built and just kind of run a Necromancer Games based campaign, but like not necessarily focused on Rapanathuk, which is like it's not a grindhouse dungeon, but it's kind of a death dungeon, a death trap dungeon. But there are other modules, while dangerous and deadly, aren't like necessarily death trappy, but I could do that because I've always loved those modules and I've never gotten a chance to really play through all of them. So that's pretty sweet. Time for Star Trek Adventures. Well, 2 of my players, Kaz and Smith, would love that. They absolutely adore Star Trek. They even said they would play Star Trek with no adventures, right? They're like, we'd be fine just we're cataloging a gaseous anomaly and there's no inciting event. We just get to be on a starship and we get to make check rolls and we're on the crew and we're just excited to be here, right? So they're Star Trek fanboys, so they would be happy for that. In fact, I think Kaz was playing like a solo. He was playing the Captain's Log Star Trek adventure, the solo thing, using like the Mythic GME and some other stuff. So he was kind of already playing it himself in a way. He's also been apparently playing 5 Parsecs from Home, which is from Modiphius, the solo war game, which is kind of cool. Alex is leveling up a 3.5 character as we speak. Alex, that's awesome. What level? What's your character? Tell us. Have everybody pick a genre and mix them. Yeah, I'd rather not. I mean, part of the problem is that the reality is that this last year has been really bad for me, for Smith, to a certain extent for Tim and even for Bob, with just timing and stress and personal life issues. God knows, I didn't think my year could get any worse. I was like, okay, I already had this fire. My HOA fucked me. My dog had to have a $10,000 surgery. Like my, insurance claim I was underinsured for my house fire. I had to go to the ER because of the house fire. Like I already thought, I was like, there's no way this year could get any worse. I'll be honest with you. I would take all of that again, rather than be dealing with what I've been dealing with. So, any case, my point is, part of the reality is, we need to pick a system that is flexible, because sometimes, we need a game system that's flexible and where we can get a lot done in a single session. Because, if we only end up playing once or twice in a month and like the sessions are like grinding and slow, I think we'll lose a lot of momentum that way. Second level Rogue Wizard. It's a great combo. I love the Rogue Wizard. I love the combination of sneak attack with touch spells. It's nice. Sigh, starting another PF2 game tomorrow night. You're just doing it to yourself, my friend. I mean, look, you obviously like playing it or you wouldn't keep running it. So there's nothing wrong with that. Or maybe it's not your favorite game system, but you would rather have players who are really excited about the game. And that's a noble thing to do. So nothing wrong with that. Honestly, I mean, it's been a year since I played Pathfinder 2nd Edition, since we finished up Abomination Vaults at the end of last year. So, I'm not opposed to. I wouldn't even be necessarily opposed to playing some PF2. I think it's a great game. It's just, it's a little over specific in some areas, and that's rough. Alex, thank you for the $5 super chat. It's your first super chat. What up?
I am strong.
Cheers.
Strong. Strong.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for hanging out with me. And again, remember, it is World Mental Health Awareness Day. So take care of yourselves. Maybe, play some games. If you're in a bad game or you're in a toxic group, maybe it's time to think about leaving it. And your damaged relationship with these horrible gamers and gamers. Maybe come join the Knights of Last Call and play with some awesome folks. But we've always got a lot of games going. PF2, where Southern Beaches is in full swing, so we've got 12 or 15 PF2 games a week. But we have a lot of other games as well, so a lot of crazy other systems. So definitely worth checking out if you are interested in talking and chatting RPGs with us. We'd love to have you there. Well, thank you, JP. Appreciate your work. Good luck with the Kickstarter. Again, remember, JP is got a Kickstarter going. So go ahead and check that out. Dragontown and the Darkness Below. So that's pretty cool. I really respect the hell out of anybody who, makes something and gets it all the way to that stage. So worth checking out. Looks like the goal has been easily reached, but there's always more stuff to do. So take a look. Well, thank you so much. Don't have time in your time slot. Keep up the great work. Well, thank you so much. Well, thank you, Alex, for that. And thank you, everybody. Thank you to Alex. Thank you to Duncan, Sebastian, KC, alternate GM, and Sidon for the wonderful tips and super chats tonight. Thank you for making this a fun stream. And thank you all for participating and commenting and being so polite and kind and nice and taking a look at yet another Free League game. And again, there are certain things over the years that Free League, sometimes some of the editing, sometimes some of the structure of the game books is a little wanting. Sometimes some of the translation, it can be a little rough. Sometimes it's just a cultural thing, which is fully on me. But by and large, I mean, between Dragonbane, Forbidden Lands, Alien, Symbaroum, Vossen, and now this game, Free League just continues to and One Ring. That's another game that I think is beautiful and lovely and needs to be more. I need to read more of it. The Free League 2nd edition version. Free League is just knocking it out of the park. This game is definitely stands apart. It's still in their universe, but it is a little bit different. And I appreciate the hell out of it for that. Go Wolverines. Is it for me? Probably not. But I could definitely see how you could tell some really cool stories here. And again, it has that sandbox vibe of Forbidden Lands, just replacing, fireballs and swords with submachine guns and Russian 70s era APC carrier, APCs. Thank you, Pathfinder. I will. And all of you have a great weekend. If you're off Monday, have a great long weekend. Otherwise, I'll see you on the Discord, and hopefully I'll see you next week. I'm not going to lie, depending on how things go, some streams might be getting canceled. I'm trying really hard to not let anxiety and panic control my life. In fact, part of the healing thing is just doing it anyways. So I'm going to try to keep streaming, and I'm going to try to keep being here for you all. But understand that, my mental health and my personal health do kind of come first. So hopefully you all can be patient with me as we move into this holiday season, and I really appreciate you being here. With that being said, we'll see you next time on Knights of Last Call. Good night, everybody.